Spock's parents adopted her. They grew up together.
They adopted a human?
They adopted a human, young human child.
As a pet?
Captain's Pod, Stardate 144054.1. Welcome aboard the Starship's Enterprise, and thank you for joining us as we take a brief shore leave from the world of CinemaSins to explore the universe of Star Trek. I'm your Captain Ian Whittington, and with me as always, she tried to prevent first contact, but all she got was this lousy bootstrap paradox. It's Ambassador Deneé.
I don't understand time.
What's amazing is that usually my intro is related to the episode that we covered last week. Not the case this time, because it's Happy First Contact Day.
Cool.
I'm so glad you asked. First Contact Day is April 5th, 2063, and this is the day.
Which is the same day this podcast releases.
Nope. Nope. Yeah, we're going to hold on to this episode until 2063, people. And it's totally going to be worth it. What have we missed? So we are recording this on First Contact Day, and it will be released next week. But yeah, this is the day that the Vulcans make contact with Earth, and they land and say, hi, you guys can travel faster than light, so we're now going to interfere.
I'm still really upset about the Velcro situation.
That happens about 100 or 200 years earlier. So don't worry. Actually, nobody knows that's happened yet, so it's okay to celebrate First Contact Day and not celebrate Velcro.
So First Contact Day is 2024?
No, 2063, but on this date, the 5th of April.
So we're celebrating not even like the anniversary of it. We're like pre-versary.
Yes, the pre-versary. Yeah.
Do you think the Vulcans will like me?
Before we get into the show...
Oh, dear. Oh, God.
Your chaos would infuriate them, Deneé.
I don't know. I really like them, though.
If they could isolate your chaos from your lack of emotions, they would love you. If they could embrace your chaos while also accepting your hatred of emotions, I think that would be your common ground. If I was a diplomat, if I had both of you at the table, that's where I would start the conversation.
Okay. Yeah. I just, I have years to prepare.
Yeah, you've got 39 years to prepare.
Do you think I'm still going to be alive in 39 years?
Before we get into the show, just keep setting them up for me and I keep knocking them out. Well, before we get into the show, I would like to say hello to anybody that is joining us, because you've noticed we're doing Discovery, and maybe the first time that you're listening to Captain's Pod.
Oh, no, that's right. We might have a brand new audience.
We may also have new people if you came over from the Lower Decks TV Sins video that just came out, and perhaps you saw that Sins video and thought, oh, these people also do a podcast. So hello to everybody that's new.
Yeah, we actually will talk about Star Trek. We usually start off the show just catching up a little bit. I guess other things that you might want to know before we jump in, podcast listeners that have been listening for a long time, you can just kind of fast forward 30 seconds.
If you're still with us at this point, you'll listen to anything we say. So don't fast forward, just suck it up.
We record our episodes live in front of a live audience every Friday. So that's at 12:30 Central Standard Time. What else do we want to tell them?
Well, we kind of break the show into seasons. So this season we'll be covering all of Discovery Season 5. Previous seasons have included Picard as it aired, every episode of Strange New Worlds, the newer episodes of Lower Decks, and then if there's no live Star Trek on TV, we pick a theme. We've just done time travel, we've done data, not information, data the character. But yeah, we kind of base those themes on your suggestions as well.
So welcome.
Now, Ambassador, it's this part of the show where we usually do emails, but we won't be doing that this week because the email section is going to be dedicated to listener predictions for this season of Discovery. So as Discovery has this ongoing arc that happens through a season, predicting what is going to happen and what is the mystery is super duper fun. So send in your predictions, no matter how bonkers they are or how off the rails they might be. Send them in to @CaptainsPodCS on Twitter or by email, which is captainspod at CinemaSins.com, or we have an entire spoiler chat on our CinemaSins Discord, which is discord.gg/CinemaSins. Okay, before we get into watching the show and then having our full debrief about it, let's do some predictions, Ambassador. You haven't seen a single episode of Discovery.
I don't know about characters. I don't know where we are in space. I don't know if this is a station or a ship or a planet.
Using some Deep Space Nine knowledge, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. So this prediction is going to be interesting. I usually go based off of the title. So what is the title of... Because I know we're watching 2 episodes today. We're going to be staying up to date with the release schedule, which is the first time that we've done a double feature, I think.
It is actually, correct, yeah.
So I think I should have the titles of the episodes, and then I will make some predictions, and then you can give me your predictions if you have any, and then we can just jump right in.
Sounds amazing. The episode titles for episode 1 and 2 for this double feature are The Red Directive. It's actually not it's just Red Directive.
Red Directive.
And episode 2 is Under the Twin Moons.
Ooh, someone's getting laid.
Wait. Oh, no, that's gross. Red Directive Under the Twin Moons? That sounds like somebody isn't getting laid.
No, Under the Twin Moons sounds sexy. That's a date.
This is an R-rated show, everybody, for those of you that do not know.
Red Directive makes it sound like it's some kind of an organization or like a group or like some kind of a policy that's getting put in place. So I'm wondering if... And red makes me think of an alarm or urgency or red alert. So my prediction is that something happens in this episode that is an emergency situation, and there is a new policy in place for handling this particular issue.
Love it. Love that. Love that. You have described another episode of Star Trek.
God damn it.
You've described an episode of Voyager called the Omega Directive. So
we really do need to do an entire season of Captain's Pod where I just predict something and then we go watch the episode that I predicted. And
then you can get mad at me for it being nothing like what you described. Okay.
I mean, that sounds like our show. Absolutely.
That's fair. And for Under the Twin Moons, whatever that was called.
Under the Twin Moons, we're going to go to a planet. And yeah, I'm really feeling like the love vibe. And I'm super excited to be wrong about this. Like, watch this be like a war episode. But I'm just feeling like there's a couple people that are like going to be feeling like the view that they have is just super romantic, and they kind of have like an exchange. I see these 2 people in my imagination giving each other this sort of look that can be interpreted as love.
Amazing. Okay, beautiful predictions. Very, very, very heartwarming. My predictions, you know what? Very similar. Red Directive, it's going to be this Starfleet thing that a certain sequence of events trigger this Red Directive, and then it's all hands on deck, battle stations.
Serious. Yeah.
Whatever you're doing, stop. This Red Directive takes priority, and the fact that it's red, I think, means that it has something to do with blood.
Ooh. Well, we know it's not Klingon blood.
Nope, because that's purple. That's just the Royal Klingons. But that's a whole other pod.
The random knowledge that I now
It's amazing. I love that. I love that so much. And Under the Twin Moons, the first clue in the mystery of solving whatever this blood problem is found in a star system that has twin moons on every planet.
Oh, that's very specific.
I love getting really super specific.
That's amazing. Okay.
My predictions for you, Ambassador, is that I will spend most of the episode trying to work out what character you're talking about because you don't remember their name. And bold prediction, you're going to really like the vibe of Discovery.
Okay.
No pressure.
Yeah, you've said that. You've told me that before.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't be surprised if that's the case.
Yeah. And I think your favorite character that you're really going to connect with and fall in love with, I'm just going to give the initials for the podcast listener, MB. I think that's the person.
Mario Brothers.
Yeah, the Mario Brothers. I'm changing all of my predictions. This is actually Discovery going into a video game and living out their Mario Brothers best dreams. Well, with that, Ambassador, any thoughts before we head into Discovery. It's still, I cannot emphasize how insane it is that we've watched Star Trek. We've covered a lot of episodes at this point. You have not touched anything of Discovery, and yet we're going into it in season 5, the final season.
I'm glad you brought that
insane.
up. Because it is something to keep in mind, and that is the vibe of the show. Honestly, this is sort of why we started doing this podcast, was to have somebody who knows nothing talk to somebody who knows a lot, which is you. So this is kind of an interesting way to redo that. When we started this podcast, we jumped into Picard because I knew TNG, and that was sort of a nice connecting point. But when we got into Strange New Worlds was really when this element of I'm learning so much because I've never seen Spock before, like in this way. I've never seen Kirk before. So then we started watching TOS together. So it's fun to look at this completely unknown part of the franchise. And it's kind of sad too, because it's like the last thing I haven't watched. No, it's not true. We didn't watch the cartoon.
Oh, the animated series.
The animated series. We haven't watched that
and
either.
Prodigy as well. There's two shows that you haven't seen.
So, yeah, I'm excited. And I also love being thrown into the deep end of puzzles. So this is...
Oh, you're going to love...
really
I think you're going to love this. I mean,
cool.
having not seen season 5 myself yet, or any of it, I think I'm confident you're going to like Discovery. Okay. Well, without further ado, let's head over to the holodeck to watch the first 2 episodes of Discovery. We'll see you in 10 Forward for a full debrief. 2 to beam out. Welcome to 10 Forward, the part of the show where we grab something from the replicator and share our immediate thoughts and feelings on the episodes we just watched together. Most important question first, Ambassador. What programmable matter would you like from the replicator?
Oh, I really need to know what is going to be blooming from whatever swamp vine is in Tall Man Hoovy Guy's room. So
Saru.
I'll be sniffing Cebu's room.
If you're going to call him Cebu, I will leave. Saru is the best. He must be respected, and his hooves must be kissed every episode. Yeah, get some of that fungus. I genuinely just want some programmable matter. Like, that is the future. Like,
what do you mean programmable matter?
So when oh man, so everything is programmable matter basically in this region of Star Trek. So things can like change shape. So instead of replicating one thing, the same thing can become lots of different things. So ships can like change configurations. Things can repair themselves. So like the ship can repair itself. Stuff is like way more interactive and malleable, and it can change. So I have a tea mug now, but it can become a dinner plate later. My imagination.
That is so broken.
Is it? Yeah, 100%, totally broken. Everything in Discovery is broken.
So it's like permanent polymorph?
Yeah, permanent polymorph. Everything can turn into something else.
Okay. Is that actually part of this universe?
Yes, that's part of this Star Trek future. Yeah.
So you would be handed a little cup of goop and then just say, become a dish.
Well, we haven't seen it do that, but in theory, yes. Yeah. It's why the ship is so like quick to be repaired, because the parts just like are interchangeable and just
put on the magic salve and then it just sort of like goops itself. Okay. Yeah. Well, I don't know that I like that. That seems that seems too much to me, but whatever.
Super broken, but I want it because it is broken. Hey, Deneé, give us a synopsis.
Ooh!
For episodes 1 and 2.
In today's episodes, we're going into a mystery, an archaeological mystery.
Yeah, we are.
Boy, another weapon has been discovered that can change everything. And doesn't this sound a lot like Picard? But you know what? That's okay, because we're on a mission. There's some Romulans involved. Doesn't that also sound a little bit like Picard?
Oh, no.
And wasn't the intro a little bit like Picard? Or was this one first? I don't know, because I'm just dropping into season 5. But this seems to be, it's the final season. So we're saying goodbye to some characters. And so Cebu is going to die, guys.
Saru.
He's
I will correct you every time.
Thank you, because in my head, he's the Hooven man. Oh, but he's Gilla. He's McGill's. Oh, he's so interesting. I don't know anything about it, but he's super cool. Anyway, he's gonna die, but then spoiler alert, he doesn't actually die. He may get a happily ever after. But let's get back to the plot.
Directive.
A bad thing has been found, and we're gonna show you TNG's Picard and an image of an alien to remind you that this happened one time. And we're going to zoom in on the background Romulan to tell you who that guy is.
Bet you never thought he'd come back.
And our beloved crew, boy, we got to save the day, but it has to be super secret because we're going to break some rules. But how many rules are they willing to break?
Mm-hmm.
I think that's
great
it.
synopsis. Yeah, I think that's a great synopsis for episode 1. Just going in completely blind, no lube. How did you find? Let's go with episode 1, Red Directive. Did you have a good time with it? How did you enjoy it? What your overall thoughts and feelings, Ambassador?
Let's launch here because this is the first time we're doing a double feature. And so I think talking about episode 1 and episode 2 is going to be a little bit tricky because they at this point have in fact all blurred together. So let's talk about what happens in episode 1 just to kind of like remind ourselves, even because we just wrapped watching episode 2.
Yeah,
so,
we did.
In episode 1, we kind of start off with the captain on top of a ship in the middle of warp drive, and then we backtrack to figure out how he got here, which is when we learn that the Red Directive is like a secret mission that's been sent, or a secret like high level security clearance that's been inactive for like a century or something. So stupid. Yeah, no, let's not crack the seal on this one and figure out if it's still important after all this. Nope. Anyway, and so then we kind of like see how it all comes together, and you have like her, the captain, and then you have Busted Ear Captain, and they are both on the same mission.
It's not busted ears, he's an alien. That's his literal ears.
He has like a chunk out of that ear.
That's how they're born. Your ears are too smooth. Yeah, that's his. I cannot remember the name of his species. He appears in one episode of Deep Space. They appear in one episode of Deep Space Nine.
There's not a chunk of his ear.
No, that's
gone.
Just his ears. Yeah.
There's like a slice out of it.
You don't have a slice. Your ears are too smooth.
I'm just saying, like, one of the ears looked as if it was Vulcan-esque, and the other one looked Vulcan-esque, but then there's like a right angle missing out of it.
You know what? I'll be so mad if in like episode 6 we get into his backstory and a chunk of his ear was ripped off, and I have to eat my words. But I think he's just
ripped.
an alien.
It looks like, it was like a cheese slicing incident or something because it's so perfectly lined.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just one ear. Anyway, this guy is like this like rough and experienced
the Maverick
captain who is going to push the boundaries and put people at risk to capture these 2 rebels who have stolen an artifact before Starfleet could get there, and they're on the run. So it's kind of like a cat and mouse game, and that's a really interesting part of both episodes. I think at the end of the first episode, we have to get Book back to kind of help move this along. We also meet Fred, and when this episode kind of comes to an end, I can't remember where the crossing point was, but I know we just lost the 2 Mock and Lock and Shock and Barrel guy.
Yeah,
people.
Mullen Luck and Burnham goes to the shady Kovich, the guy who has all of the answers, and he spells out exactly what this artifact is, what the Romulan book is talking about, what the progenitors are, and exactly what the crux of this technology is all about. That was the end of episode 1.
We also have Red Curls, who is
Tilly.
Teacher Tilly, who also hacks into the government system, and finds out some truths to share with our captain, Michael, so that we have a little bit more information. So there's a lot of characters, a lot of things going on. But like for watching this, quote unquote, for the first time, and I have to admit something somehow here, but we'll do that in a second. I really loved it. Like I was on a technological high.
Hell yeah. Information dump.
It wasn't really information dump. It was like CGI.
Yeah, I guess it's more of a visual dump of this new technology for you.
The audio. Yeah, everything was like, what the? I mean, how many times did I say what the fuck when I was watching it?
Many times. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was fun to watch you watch this.
It was more like, why is the ship doing that? Like, there are so many weird things going on that I'm not used to happening with the technology that I for sure am going to be missing some sins that I feel like the show would have on a different pace. Like, this is a fast-paced visual extravaganza.
Yeah.
But the other reason I really love this episode is we got to see like a new Data. And I am so mad that Fred is dead, guys. Like, bring him back.
My favorite part of watching the show with you was, wait, Fred's going to be number one. He's going to be the new person that comes onto the ship. And I'm like, no, it's going to be Booker, I'm afraid. It will not be Fred the dead android. Honestly, I think Fred is the best android we've had. I think it's better than he's a better Data than what we had in Picard in some ways. Like, he's so good. The actor, like, I had to Google him. J. Adam Brown did such a spot on, I'm not even going to say like Data or Law impression, but a Soongian impression of a Soong android. I can imagine him being another model as he is. He's created by Alton Soong. He was spot on in the evolution of where I see androids going after Data and Law. He was so good. He should not have been the highlight of the episode, but he was.
He
was
really
good.
was. Well, the idea of this show, I understand, is in like the 30th century or something.
The 3100s, yeah, 32nd century.
And so we're looking at this like the technology is just a super shift away from the TOS I've been watching, but then
yeah,
I mean it's night and day in that feeling, and so I'm loving it because the pacing is different, the storytelling is a little bit different, but also to kind of harken back to Data was super smart, and this is before we're revealed about like the Picard thing. I think
TNG
that
connection.
Happens,
yeah,
it either happens at the end of this episode. I think it happens at the end of the first episode.
It's right at the end of this episode, yeah. Right at the very end.
Because she talks to the Admiral person, and essentially he gives her...
He dismisses the hologram and then brings up the actual...
IUD or whatever it is.
Yeah, the archive. I still don't know what that thing does. They keep handing it to each other, and I'm
what is it?
I think that's the Red Directive.
Is it?
I think that's the important data chip thing. Because I think I'm guessing each one is encoded into that Infinity thing, and then they get drip fed some of the information, and then they have to give it back to Kovic. Who David Cronenberg, by the way, fucking killing it as sketchy Starfleet Section 31 dude.
Where do I know that name from?
You will recognize him. He's a fucking movie director, and yet he is in Star Trek Discovery as this creepy know-it-all Section 31 agent. He incredible.
Definitely knows how to control his facial features really well.
He's incredible.
But there is this, I mean, the first episode was like just this appealing experience. It was action sequence after action sequence. We got to see two ships merge their shields and dig their heads in like
Let's
ticks.
Go.
And stop an avalanche. There's just a really
all of the warp tunnel stuff.
Yeah, it was really unique. But I also love the cleverness of the bad guys here that were pursuing this idea that they shot off all of these different warp signatures, and so to throw Starfleet off. So we have a very clever, quote unquote bad guy that we're going to track. They had booby trapped their exit and you could see that the captains are like, ooh, this is something interesting. Like, I get to play with my food a little bit. So it went so fast I couldn't really stop and think too much about what I was watching, which
super fast paced.
Upon second, third, fourth watch, you might pick up on some things. There was definitely stuff that annoyed me, but I was fascinated by the world that I was dropped into.
And you were dropped into it heavy. Honestly, I'm glad you had such a good time with it. Like, so this is 900 years ahead of Strange New Worlds and TOS, 800 years ahead of TNG. This ship started off alongside Captain Pike and the Strange New Worlds era of Star Trek. And in season 3, they were shunted for reasons into this far, far, far flung off future. So a lot of this advanced, like a bold swing for a TV show to spend 2 seasons in one time zone and then jump ahead 900 years into the future.
Whoa. So they acclimated to the future tech and were reinstated into Starfleet with their limited knowledge?
Correct. Yes. So
just the ship's people?
So Discovery gets sent into the 32nd century, and really briefly they find out that there is like no Federation Starfleet is in tatters. There's no warp drive. Some disaster happened 200 years ago or something that killed all of warp drive. So they're actually the only warp-capable ship anywhere, which is a
that
clever
sounds like
way.
a nightmare.
Absolute nightmare. Kind of a clever way to get them to be relevant. They essentially they find Starfleet, they solve all of the problems, they get back together. The Discovery gets a huge 32nd century upgrade and is now the Discovery A. So that's why it has like the separated nacelles, the programmable matter, and then the crew is just given the ship and told how to use the new technology.
Okay.
That's the long and short of it.
Interesting. I don't know how to think about that. I don't know how to think about that.
They've been there for 3 or 4 years now, so it's okay. They've adapted.
I'm just imagining the decision to take your show and if that was the plan from the beginning.
Like I don't the rumors and stuff is like they were, because this is a show that's set before the original series, there was a lot of, well, this technology doesn't make sense because they didn't use the view screen, they used projections, everything looked more advanced, and there was a lot of, you're meddling with canon and you're disturbing the timeline of Trek as we know it. So my instinct is that by the end of season 2, they were like, fuck it, we'll take them out of this time, put them into the far future, so you can't moan at us about every story interfering with the established canon and the timeline. And when you put it far into the future, you've got free reign because it hasn't happened yet. Strange New Worlds can be the prequel series that is a bit more respectful of the established canon and whatnot. I imagine it was a freedom thing.
I don't mind that. Get clever with your writing. This is sci-fi. Like,
totally
go have fun with it.
That is not my issue, yeah.
And also, like, the ability to have a now currently produced Star Trek that allows you to play around with technology, because Strange New Worlds is a bit limited because it is a prequel. You can't show some of the technology that we're seeing here. Like we got to see some really unique, for me, you guys are probably used to seeing this because you've been watching the show, but like for me, she is flying through space. She falls out of a ship, has an instant like suit on, falls through space or doesn't fall, because falling in space probably isn't actually accurate.
Inertia still happens, so she would be falling.
And then just like the people who are watching are like, you know what would be best? Let's just beam her in at the last second.
I love that so much.
So she has a dramatic entry onto the bridge. Like, won't that be cool? It looked amazing.
I really hope somebody was like, okay, we've got her. And Saru's just like, yeah, but I've got something cooler. Let's do this instead. It's like, wait for it. And
then you could almost just see the captain being like, oh, we're doing this again. And then she just starts walking so that as she gets into the ship.
It's so fucking cool.
You know, she doesn't break pace or anything.
Sinful as heck, but I love it. For me, like, it's so hard. Like, it's tricky to predict where technology is going to be 300 years from now, which is what TOS and the Next Generation does. I cannot fathom 900 years. So I think for the most part, they do it in a way where I buy it. And I'm just like, you're either all beings that have left your body and evolved to a point where you think and magic happens, or you advance the technology that you know is kind of logically a few steps down the line, but you're taking it like 100 steps away. So for the most part, I love the technology in Discovery and how advanced it is compared to like what we know. My favorite one for me is the evolution of the transporters, because just that tap, tap, quick, go wherever you want, immediate transporter effect. Yeah, it takes some of the fun away from transporters, but I buy it as a natural progression where you have this personal transporter button that can just take you anywhere. In 900 years, totally see that's where transporters would be.
Yeah.
And that's fun for me.
A lot of the things that were happening that were confusing to me is this, like, when Discovery would like leave or go somewhere. I saw it more in the second episode than the first. It would just sort of like on itself and sort of just it just disappears on screen in a downward fashion. And that I did not like. You usually see ships going off into the distance.
Yeah.
And I like that because it makes me feel like we're not dropping into a dark hole. You know what I mean?
Which is essentially what's happening. And I think that the spore drive, because Discovery has a spore drive as well as a warp drive. And the spore drive was probably the most contentious thing that fans had with Discovery. Discovery was a top secret ship that had this top secret spore drive that basically tapped into a spatial mycelial network of space mushrooms that let them vanish.
I'm sorry, could you go back to the space mushroom part?
Mycelial network of space mushrooms, yep.
Are they invisible?
Yep. So
Okay.
subspace is what you use when you're traveling faster than light. The mycelial network is what the spore drive used. And the difference between it and warp drive is that you immediately appear in your destination, and it can be basically anywhere. So in a series set before Captain Kirk, you have this mystical spore drive that can put you anywhere essentially in the galaxy. And everyone was like, why are we not hearing about this? This is a prequel. Yeah. How did they bury this? So it's an interesting conceit. It is like, it's not just, hey, we invented this because we wanted to. It's tied into the plot of season 1 pretty intricately. But then at the end of season 2, they're basically like, we're going to make this sacrifice, go off to the future, take all of this information with us, and will deny that Discovery ever existed. And that's how they got away with this is why you didn't hear about it in TNG. This is why we've never heard of the spore drive. It's been classified.
Well, I love the idea of there being an invisible, world of spore network. That's exciting and unique. But watching it like on itself
super
is
creepy.
Really...
It like spins around and then jumps down and then reappears and blah, blah, blah. Yeah,
it looks
super
amazing.
Weird. Looks beautiful.
It's so strange how you get used to one thing.
Yeah, 100%.
And it didn't do that. Another reason I like this episode, the tech related, is we do get to see so many different things I don't usually get to see. There's these panels that pop up in front of people. There's a unique way that they're telling the story. So it's not going to the debrief room and sitting everybody in chairs and pulling up one thing on screen and having your engineering
it's way more dynamic
conversations. Yeah, you're like already on the move, walking, going, yep, okay, and like you're holding something out in front of you that's scanning things.
We're the cool kids. We don't have briefing rooms. We really do things on the go.
And I also really enjoyed the captain. I have to say, like, there's a couple when she first gets on the ship after finding out that they've got this red directive. And she is telling everyone what's about to happen. I was like, I want to work for this woman. She informed everybody. And it was so unique because a lot of times it's just like, set course for so-so. And here she's like, this is where we're going. This is what's going to happen. This is what we're scanning for. This is what we're looking for. And then there was another moment on the second episode when she's like, they are already down, on this planet. And she essentially is like, I want scanners up in the sky. I want to do this. I want to do this. Even if they never... I don't know if the story intends to have that matter, because sometimes you get into this realization that no dialogue exists that doesn't allude to something else. Because
why have it on screen?
Exactly. The writers are limited in how much time they have. Exactly. And so every word is precious in some way. But I loved the idea that there's a chance that the way that this show might be written is that that's just world building. Like that is what the captain would do. And it really solidified her as a strategist and how she problem solved and how she worked alongside the captain in the second episode, in the first episode when she's kind of going tit to tat, like arguing about what we're doing. It was from the very beginning. Like when she's riding the fucking ship to the warp line and they're arguing back and forth and then her ship appears. Like that visual technology stuff looked so incredible when they all bubbled into the same little flow and they all had to adjust for it. Like, oh, it's just brilliant stuff.
It's so
My mind was blown. I loved it.
So rolling back to Michael Burnham, who, if you remember the initials that I gave you before we went into 10 Forward, was MB, of the character that you would relate to the most and love the most.
Oh, is that the captain?
Captain Michael Burnham.
Oh, she's great.
She's great. And that is, like you said, that is very much her command style. Is very collaborative. This isn't just follow my orders. It is group collective endeavor. And we're going to think through this problem together. And she's like, thank you for getting here so quickly. Like, she's very apologetic with how she communicates her orders and how she communicates with her crew. And that's not necessarily all of the captains from this era or whatever, but this is Michael Burnham's style, and I love her style.
Yeah.
I really liked this first episode. This has the classic Discovery episode 1 thing, where it is really high action, high octane, set up the mystery of the season. Episode 1 rarely fails to disappoint because it's kind of laying all of the plot lines, it's laying the conflict, it's laying the mystery, and it sucks you in with a lot of action. So I had an absolute blast with episode 1. And I love so much, because I'm a sucker for TNG and I did not expect this, a massive, fundamental tie-in back to TNG and The Chase, which is a fairly notorious episode of TNG, which they do a great job of describing in this episode. Basically, they go on the same treasure hunt. Each species has different parts of a map that's been encoded into their DNA, and this map leads to a planet which has the bald aliens progenitor people. So the Klingons, the Cardassians, the Romulans, the humans all kind of land on this planet, and this hologram appears and says, "We put our seed into the galaxy." And the bottom line is that's why y'all have 2 arms, 2 legs, look basically human, but with some accoutrement added on. Like, because the big question was, wow, don't all of these aliens look like humans but with funny ears or a funny nose? And this was Star Trek's way of explaining that the template for life, at least in the Alpha Quadrant and this galaxy, in the Milky Way, was because these aliens seeded all of the planets, or a lot of the planets, with their own DNA.
And that's the alien that we see at the end of episode 1?
Yes, so the one that's in the projection from the episode of TNG. Yeah, the bald-looking alien. Yeah.
Okay.
And that's them. So, yeah, and the launching point is that these aliens, if they were able to do that, they also have this other technology that's also completely devastating that this Romulan scientist found out about. I love that connection. I love it because it's probably the biggest bit of lore contribution that TNG did. It's explaining why every alien in Star Trek basically looks the way that they do. So I love that we're not just burying it in the past and doing a bit of work with it to propel it forward, add some more context to it, make it make more sense.
And that's where episode 2 kind of like kicks off, if you kind of want to shift into the episode 2.
Yeah, sounds great.
So here we start off literally with the captain sort of reflecting on the purpose of life. Like, philosophers and scientists have been asking the question, why are we here? What is our purpose? What do we want to do with our lives? And she's kind of like, I felt like I kind of, my purpose is my mission, and now I don't really know if that's true or not. So this series, those 2 episodes, it's doing a lot of work.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're not only telling an interesting story to a new viewer like myself, which I think that they succeeded really well on episode 1 and even in episode 2, but they're also ending a series. And so they're going to be tying a lot of these thoughts into like where they're going to have these characters like landing at the end, and like how we're going to be saying goodbye to this crew of people that we've been invested in. So I can kind of tell how even every time she speaks, or every time that there's an exchange between characters, it's the show's goodbye. And
yeah.
I think that they're doing a pretty good job of it. It's a little too heavy-handed on the book thing, this Booker guy, whoever he is. I was fine with, in fact, at the end of the first episode, like when we start the second one, my first note was, what happened to that trench coat? Like, what happened to him?
To trench coat man.
She and he obviously have an exchange. They've been through a lot together. And they're essentially saying, yeah, we've been through too much to kind of reignite anything. That's pretty clear. And then he's immediately back in episode 2. And I was really hoping it was going to be Fred.
Fred would have been amazing.
You know,
Fred has lots of information.
He's valuable, even with all of the wires.
Comic relief just would have been great. Yeah, episode 2, if episode 1 is setting up the mystery and the objective that the season has, episode 2 is kind of solidifying the interpersonal relations and the kind of the personal arcs that are going to happen throughout the story, while also giving another piece of the puzzle. I enjoyed it much less, and this is a classic Discovery thing for me, where you get the action of the first episode and then the immediate episode 2 slump, where we just throw the anchors out, things slow way, way, way down. And I did not mind that in season 3, which was the first season in this new time, the season that introduced Booker and all of that. Season 4, it was starting to grate on me a little bit, but got better in the back end. Season 5, these conversations probably got to me more because it feels like the same conversations and the same dilemmas that I've had from these characters for 3 seasons, and some going back all the way to season 1. Like, this will they, won't they, with Booker and Michael hasn't stopped. It's been exactly the same thing throughout all 3 seasons that they've been together. Saru is interesting, and I can get into that, but he's kind of dealing with a lot of the same stuff. It's just, I don't know why we're still hung up and having the same conversations. It's this lack of progression that really, really frustrates me in episode 2.
If I was to kind of like interpret what you're saying, when you're saying the anchors got thrown down, there was less visual action and there was maybe like, but we still had a lot of action I thought the action pace was really interesting and good in episode 2. But I think you're talking about like these relationships further sunk it down because we're having the same conversations that you've seen in previous seasons.
Yeah.
So it made it feel even like more like paced, like muddied sort of quicksand.
The action was great, and I don't need action in an episode, but when we're getting really deep into these heavy conversations about relationships and love and the complex stuff, that's great as well, but not when I've already heard it. I don't feel like anything new, for me, having watched all of the other seasons, was brought to the table in this. And when you have precious time left in your wrap-up season, I don't need to be retreading the same ground. And I think it's mainly the Michael and Booker thing. If it was everyone else, like Saru, great. Tilly, amazing, because we actually haven't seen a lot of Tilly lately. Paul struggling with what his legacy is going to be now that the Spore Drive program has been shut down, fine. But all of that compounded with the focus being on the Michael and Booker relationship, which at the start of the season they love each other, and then they're apart, and then they have fights, and then they're forced back together by a mission, and then at the end of the season they're apart again, is for me infuriating when that's the focus.
No, I get it. Well, it feels very much like a soap opera at that point.
Very much, yeah.
Which, when you watch a soap opera, you're just wanting it to be on in the background. And but there was something for me, first time I'm watching any of this happen, the depth of emotion that these actors are kind of portraying, the history, I can see it. I don't have to know any of that. So, like, hey, person that's just jumping into Discovery with me out there, aren't we lucky we didn't have to see all the bullshit before? Because it was really... If you love
this, you'll love it when it happens in season 3.
When they are on the motorcycles on that first one, and they're talking and they're kind of reminiscing, and there's a familiarity with relationships. And I've personally experienced seeing an ex and like having a wave of nostalgia and being like, man, like we had a lot of fun together too. And then also all of a sudden that second hit of, oh God, it wasn't great, was it?
This is why we're not together.
But we still love each other. We still care about each other. And then that next wave hits where it's like, are we going to do this again? And then the next wave hits, And I thought that motorcycle moment was really powerful. This captain, she's just covered in blood, and then she has this like emotional moment, and she so intentionally connects with everyone. And I think that's what you're talking about when you talk about the nurturing or the caring kind of that thing. Is I really, really get the impression, and obviously it's meant to be that way, that she is intentional and she's present and she's activated. She's not just sort of passively sitting in a captain's chair. She is out there in the action. Like when she shows up in the sick bay or the engineering room or whatever she goes next, and she's still covered in blood.
Yeah.
Like the vibe I got was, it's just another Saturday. Here she comes
really
again.
This happens. But when you have technology that can just patch it up in seconds, the urgency behind, I need to get this head wound looked at, disappears.
I know we also missed a couple things in episode 1 that I just want to hit on. Did you like the moment whenever they unpack their bag of like hypo spray and all these old things? Did you enjoy that part?
I was losing it.
It was so cute, wasn't
because
it?
there is a self-sealing stem bolt in there, which is the friggin' running joke from Deep Space Nine. It's the gift that keeps on giving, and we get a full shot of it on screen. We're like, that's the self-sealing stem bolt, people. The old tricorder. Even the old Romulan uniform, I was like, that desiccated husk of a Romulan is wearing a really cool uniform, and that's what I'm focusing on. It's so fun.
It's so interesting too. And there was like there was the beat of humor where like, if you know, you know,
Yes.
that's there. But then even if you don't know anything about self-sealing stem bolts or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
the way that is it Maul and
Moll and Locke.
the way, okay, first of all, when he took off his helmet and like let his skin breathe for a second, that was
need to
fucking
talk
awesome.
about this. It's so good. It's a physical prosthetic that is a man in an actual physical prosthetic. It's not just CGI and shit.
Yeah,
but that first bit when he takes the mask off is CGI, and I'm like, that's how you do it, people. That's how you blend CGI with physical prosthetics.
It kind of
so
looked
freaking
like
good.
He sort of like he was transparent, and then he became. I'd have to watch it again, but I was really
like,
fascinated.
there's no way you're keeping this up. This is not what this person is going to look like. You cannot afford that. So when it disappeared, I was like, yeah, I was right.
Okay.
Oh, that
yeah.
sucks. But
yeah, it must have been
beautiful.
something.
I hope we get to see it again. It was so good.
So anyways, the humor of that moment, that stem bolt moment for me, I kind of knew like, oh, this is fun. This is like the old tech kind of coming back in. But it's when Locke is like, and then this thing, whatever it is, like they knew what everything else was. This is a tricorder from the something century, and it still works pretty well. This is this, and then there's the
whatever that is.
Like,
yeah.
And I thought that was really clever because they have an interesting back and forth. You can feel it from the very first moment that they speak. Anyways, they did a really fantastic
really like
job.
them as a pairing. I hope we get a bit more of them. And I'm sure we will, given her quote unquote relation to Book. But I really liked them as a kind of Firefly-esque pirates, miscreantness.
Yeah.
Obviously, I'm thinking of that because she says shiny, which made me think of like the Firefly slang. But they give me that pirate vibe to them, which is really fun.
This idea too that they're, as we learn in episode 2, really like just using everything from every single piece of technology out there. They're sort of merging it all together. And it's interesting that the show is obviously already injecting a care of them. So we know that by the end of this series, you know, if Booker is going to be reunited with the long lost sister person, and then they're going to, you know, have a somewhat standardized evil empire to have some rules for or something. I guess that's a big prediction for the future. But they're already, quote unquote, humanizing them in how they're writing about them, even though we've seen them murder Fred. And we can't forgive them for that.
Fred was so great. Fred was just his mannerisms, just the way he delivered things somewhere in between Data and Lore.
It was perfect.
Was just so, I will not stop thinking about Fred.
No. The zoom in on the nails when he was like doing the puzzle box.
Perfect. I wanted one of them to peel up and I just have a little button inside of it.
Which you should never want. So great job, show. You know, trying to get that.
So good.
So in the second episode, we have cracked the code and we're going to this particular planet. And this is where we get to see some fun on the ground archaeological experiences.
Yes, with the Promelians. Another TNG callback.
I didn't know that. Who are the Promelians?
So the
Are they like chameleons?
What's incredible, and I was just like, just the way the universe sometimes random chance allow things to happen. The Promelians were introduced in an episode of TNG called Booby Trap. Now,
did I see that one?
If you remember a few weeks ago, Booby Trap was the episode I was going to get us to watch, but the chat said, oh my god, do not watch Booby Trap because Geordie is creepy in that episode.
Oh, yeah.
And it ties into season 5 of Discovery.
I mean, I think that they're so glad we didn't watch it, but still.
Unreal. You all said don't watch Booby Trap, and we should have watched Booby Trap. Incredible.
So, I will say this episode is designed to make us think that Hoof Boy is going to die, right? That's the whole purpose of this episode.
Yeah, it kind of felt that way, didn't it? That he was, but I think that would be extremely, extremely cruel because Saru has, I think, arguably, not arguably, whatever, the best arc in Discovery. And a lot of characters have a lot of great arcs, but his is, for me, the most like compelling as an alien. And not that I'm an alien, but his alien arc is really, really compelling. And to kill him off in the final episode, if you have to do it, kill him off with a big thing at the end. Don't kill him in episode 1. Like, let him have a goodbye. Episode 2, sorry. Let him have a goodbye. Let him have a final season. For me, I think there would have been a righteous outrage of injustice had Saru died in this episode.
I don't think that they would spend like they spent time on both episodes showing us his end, and they're letting him exit in episode 2. So obviously he is going to survive unless he shows up on his ship and saves the day and sacrifices himself at the end.
Yeah.
We'll figure that out.
Yeah.
But seeing him like this really interesting alien too, thought that the episodes did a really good job of giving me just enough information about him to remind me who he is if I didn't remember, and also introduce me to him as a new person, finding out that there was this calling thing, that loving someone has been an interesting experience because he couldn't love people that would be cold. So he had to protect himself, and now he's fallen for a very short in stature Vulcan that just actively wants to read his mind on the dance floor, and that's kinky stuff, and I'm all for it.
I was like, wow, that's a very forceful mind meld. I'm glad you two like
that's like the flirty. They were so
together.
Flirty. She's just like, I'll just get in there and see it if you want me to. But I was like, whoa, we're just like throwing that around. But you know what? It's the future, so maybe things are different.
They have been the most satisfying romance for me, perhaps in all of Star Trek. Like, I'm struggling to think of one that's better, but I think she's special because she's half Romulan and half Vulcan.
Really?
I maybe have just invented that in my head.
Interesting. Okay.
But I'm 99% certain that she's half Vulcan, half Romulan, and she's like the merger. So at this point, Vulcan and Romulus have merged together into one society. But what's awesome is that they have this like really innocent, flirty thing together, either in season 3 or season 4. I think it's season 3, and it evolves over season 4. And it's so gradual, and it's so deliberate and thoughtful, and not like salacious or anything. It's such a wholesome, respectful relationship. I love it so much. And when she proposes to him, I'm like, I know relationships can be complicated and come in all various forms, shapes, and sizes. But I love this relationship so much more than I do the Berman and Booker stuff. I'm just like, just give me more Saru and the Vulcan. It's so amazing. She's amazing. I love them both. I hope they do get a happily ever after.
I think that the show wants them to, which is really fun to see. And I like that this episode was kind of like his like last hurrah. But this is really an episode dedicated to not just his relationship with his soon-to-be wife, but also his captain/friend that's obviously been through a lot. We got to see his room. We got to hear about his history. We got to see him fight. We got to see him run. We got to see him shoot quills. That's gotta hurt. He was running
fast,
right? Like, that's gotta not feel good.
What, running
certainly your quill effect, like those things have to grow and become solid, and then you shoot. And I feel like I saw him kind of go, "Whoo!" afterwards, as if he was having some sort of like letdown.
It's super complex because like his species was bred to be hunted essentially, and he broke free and liberated his entire planet. So he's fighting a lot of evolutionary urges that have been suppressed or manipulated. So yeah, I think when he does that, it's expressing a power that his people haven't expressed for a very, very, very long time. He's fascinating. He's so interesting.
Well, I really enjoyed seeing that. I was a little distracted, and I guess this could potentially be a sin, but in episode 1, there was a camera angle where you could clearly see the actor's lip. And I thought that's how he was created. Like, I thought that was how they apply the prosthetic every single time, so that he has almost like a double lip action, the lower lip.
Yeah.
But then in episode 2, they had attached, I think, the prosthetic to his lower lip, and then they had added some darker coloration with some of the depth work.
I see what you mean.
So that it was one lip, but it was so obviously not that in the first episode that I then became distracted because
interesting.
Hello, this is a beautiful prosthetic. Like,
it really is. It's incredible.
It's so gorgeous, and he has this like really bright eyes, and it's incredible to be able to feel expression, even though there's essentially just a massive like eye section. But he's able to kind of smile, and part of it kind of goes up on one side.
Yes.
He's so tall and lanky as well, and he was able to express not obviously a lot through voice work, which is, anyone who's in a prosthetic has to be able to like really portray through their voice. But there was just a tenderness to him, but then also a directness when he was in the captain's chair, and then also he's an action person. So the 1-2 punch of episode 1 and episode 2, I really did enjoy this character, but I did think he was going to die. Absolutely.
Well, I think it is actually, it's a really smart placement for the first 2 episodes to do this thing for Saru if they know that he's going to be a little bit sidelined. So to really put a lot of the focus on him and seeing him in action in the captain's chair, honoring his relationship with Burnham, which was super duper complicated to begin with. Just Doug Jones, who plays Saru, is so freaking good.
So he might be somebody who there are a few character actors, and he might be one that I've watched on Face Off. Actually, I would really like to know if it's the same person, because there's a person that goes on to Face Off, though I don't think that they're in production anymore. That I love that show. I know I've mentioned that before, but that's one of my passions of watching sci-fi is the really interesting character monsters. But there's this one particular actor who is usually hired for these things because he's so tall and lanky, and he uses the prosthetics really, really well. So I wouldn't be surprised if this is the same person.
It could well be. Yeah, he's in prosthetics for pretty much every single job that he does. he's just a prosthetics guy. He's always in them. Yeah, he's amazing. So yeah, episode 2, the crux of it, other than getting rid of Saru and moving him along, is the establishment of the scavenger hunt. So it's cementing that the Romulan has found bits of this puzzle. I don't think he's leaving the puzzle pieces behind, but there is a scavenger hunt to find this map and to find the most powerful weapon. And no doubt there's going to be some other players in hand. So as far as episode 2 progressing the mystery, are you invested in the mystery? Were you kind of distracted by the emotional stuff with the characters? What's making you want to come back for episode 3?
This show makes me want to come back to episode
fair.
3.
Yeah, that's absolutely fair. Yeah.
No, I think if I was to catch this on TV and I would have actually watched the first one, the second one, and I knew that it was ending, I would finish watching this season.
Yeah.
I often will not pick up a book if it hasn't been written yet. If a series. So if I were to pick up a book and I realize it's in the middle of the series, I
you don't have to wait
reading because
yeah.
I know I'm going to want to read to the very end and see what the author wanted to present.
Yeah, that's fair.
So I'm more invested, I think, for those reasons. But I do like the acting. I like the character work. I'm really loving these little places we're visiting, the tech that I'm looking at, the ships that I'm looking at. And I think that their pacing on storytelling is really well. We're really getting to see this sort of camaraderie between all of these different people. Like, we go into the science room and we see how these 2 people are collaborating back and forth to solve the problems there. We're going into the engineering room. We're going into sick bay. We're seeing how each kind of area has someone to bounce off of as they're trying to solve problems. And I think that that's really kind of fun, to watch. Yeah, I think it might be watching the crew because I am curious about them. You can tell that they've been through a lot. There's reference of maybe a character that's passed away at this point.
Yeah, there's a couple that have died, actually.
There's the character that's in with red curls that in the sciences, maybe. And they are talking about, at one point in time, kind of in a more reflective way, that this is their first time to be solo and they kind of like it.
Yeah, so that character's name, for crying out loud, that is Adira, who I think goes by they, and they're talking about Gray, who is Gray hasn't died. Gray is off pursuing a different mission, basically on a different journey. But they have very much been joined at the hip and very much connected. This is their first time where they've been apart.
Well, that's interesting. I don't know. I just see a lot of depth of their emotion about maybe how close they were, and they don't get to have to. So I think that's why I would go back, is that I am a little bit curious about how it's all going to kind of play out. I'm not as invested, obviously, as somebody who's watching all of Discovery. Like, Red Curls is obviously flirty or attracted to a person and then awkwardly sort of shuts herself away, like, yeah, it's enough of that. And she's a little bit drunk, and that was a fun scene.
Tilly was a joy, an absolute joy in the first couple of seasons. And then I think the actor, the long story short is that the actor had some irritating internet abuse thrown at them because of how Tilly was, and Tilly was a bit scatty and kind of withdrew a little bit, understandably. Like, I don't want this hate, I don't want this abuse. And I think they kind of toned her down a bit from season 3 and 4. So I love that in season 5 they're bringing back her like goofiness and kind of scatterbrainness. That's what I loved about Tilly. But it sucks that some people were really abusive and shitty about that. So yeah, screw you guys.
Yeah, anytime
Tilly's
you want to
great.
get really depressed about how quote unquote advanced we are as people, is just listen to a news anchor talk about the emails and messages that they get every day telling them how horrible they look, how they look fat, et cetera, et cetera. Like we just it's depressing for sure. There's another person. We also have like social media now, and we get to hear hateful voices for the first time in our evolutionary history. At no point in time in the past have we had to live in a world where we know that somebody actively is hating on us. We didn't have access to those kinds of comments. And so I don't think that we have even had a chance to develop the kind of conversations that we need to have early on in life to prepare us to know how to disengage from anything that throws hate our way, to the vastness and to the depth that happens when you're on social media. But when you're an actor, you're out in the public eye, you really can't get away from it too much, because it's part of your job is to sort of be present there. So building in a way for you to have a buffer where you're not reading the comments and you're not looking to them for that dopamine hit of appreciation and then the absolute devastation. I mean, like, social media is killing children, and it's something that we're not prepared for. And I know I hate to bring it down, but it's just something I'm really passionate about now that I have my own child who absolutely is going to want to be on the internet. Like, how do I prepare her to not give a shit about what anyone else says and be able to do her job? And how do we combat when someone doxes you? How do we combat that? Like, these are people they're individual people who have been given a job to present a character, and then actual humans decide, I don't like that. I'm going to find out who it is. I'm going to go terrorize their social media platform. And that is something that needs to be like stopped, but we don't have the regulations to stop it. Like if you go to the police, you have to know how to stop it. You have to know how to go onto the websites and to have your personal information removed. And it's up to you to like track all this information. You're the victim. It's really fucked up. We haven't caught up to this kind of terror.
Laws haven't caught up. Nobody has caught up. And the problem is the people, just to generalize, the people making the laws aren't of the generation that it applies to, really. They're a generation beyond the people that should be making these rules. The crux of it that like really pisses me off is that why are you watching Star Trek if you are capable of that level of intolerance? Like, this isn't the show for you. I mean, how can you watch Star Trek in your own head, listen to the stories that it teaches and the lessons that it gives you, and still hurl shit about how somebody looks and how they are? I'm like, why? This show isn't for you. Stop
it's
it.
wild that, you might have seen this kind of characteristic, because the Tilly character reminded me of our beloved Borg queen, right? Like, she had that sort of vibe.
Oh, Agnes, yeah.
Agnes had that sort of energy of being a bit like kooky, being a little like awkward.
Tilly has murdered much less people, but yes.
And being adorable and intellectual and complicated and everything. She kind of has that sort of vibe, but the difference is that she might not fit into the uniform the way that you like people to fit into your uniforms.
And that's it.
And whether that's a physical body or a character work or because she has red hair or because of how she talks or whatever, I'm glad that, like, what you're telling me right now, I'm obviously really passionate about it in the moment. I didn't know any of this before now, but I'm glad she's coming into this realm to give the character a little bit more time to be quote unquote alive in our imaginations, and be willing to face that. I don't know. Recently I was looking at this like news articles, not only about how social media impacts young children, but then also athletes. There's an athlete that when she fails, when she doesn't make that shot, she gets hate and death threats on social media. And so we're talking about just a culture that, yeah, you're right. Like, there shouldn't be, somebody shouldn't find a happiness and joy and think that it's their place to tell anyone that they're failing at being a human.
Yep, absolutely. Maybe one day we'll get there. Maybe by the 3200s we'll finally get there. But something tells me there'll always be a minority. Grr.
I just want to know where the spore network is so I can just get there faster.
Yeah, it's kind of...
wait, does it go in time or is it just place?
No, it's just... There was some talk about time, but it's mainly place. It's mainly... Yeah, and it can kind of bring people back from the dead as well. It's a weird one. The spore thing is very, very strange.
Well, to get back into the character work, I really did enjoy Tilly and their kind of interactions with the different characters. And then you've just got these different, like, then you got the two kind of doctor minds who are maybe married, if I'm getting that correctly, the gay couple. I really enjoyed them.
And Dr. Kolber. Yeah, Paul Stamets.
And it seemed like these doctors are also more interested in your well-being, which is a cool thing to see Discovery push into, which is not just how your body is, but how is your mind. So I wonder if that's an intentional thing that's happened throughout all the seasons, where it's kind of more from that psychology sort of Deanna Troi, how are you feeling?
Yeah, so back in this period, there wasn't or back in the Pike TOS period, there wasn't really a ship's counselor on board. So as they jumped into the future, Dr. Kolber realized that his calling was also going to be the ship's counselor. So he's not actually the chief medical officer.
Okay.
He's a senior medical officer, but he found his calling to be being the ship's counselor as well. So he is very much the Deanna Troi, but more useful on Discovery. And that really came up last season, where he does a lot of work helping people deal with trauma, especially after an away mission that was particularly fucked up. He would kind of slide in and be like, so, how are you doing? That was kind of fucked up. And people would be like, okay, I'll talk to you about it.
I kind of love
much
that,
needed.
though.
That's a really organic way to get into those conversations for me that I love it.
And it is part of what will advance us and evolve us as people, is to see these kinds of conversations being normalized. And I know that it seems like, oh yeah, we know that already. But we can know it, but we need to experience it.
We can know it and not do it.
We need to experience it in our content. I mean, like, we'll see people now on shows, quote unquote, go to their counselor and the door closes and they have a private conversation. But I think we need to actually experience a little bit more of like that counselor experience. And I'm talking, I've just started going to a counselor for the first time in my life. And I went in going like, I don't even know why I'm doing this, except for I've been told it's probably good to talk to somebody. In the first session, I spent 98% of it crying, which is a super shock. But it was just like this release of, oh, I'm telling a total stranger about like my deep trauma right now. Like that was really intense.
Really powerful.
And having a safe space to like just talk about it. Even though I've talked about my traumas and I've been going through them, I don't necessarily have a safe place with a stranger to do that. And it evokes a different emotion than talking to my friends about it who already know about it.
Of course.
So it was crazy.
Well, and you know that this person is deliberately, like, friends, we have to listen. This person...
That's not true. You don't have to listen.
This person has to listen, but they have to listen in a proactive way where they're in theory using their knowledge and their training and their experience to be productive and to help you. So it adds that extra weight to the thing that you're saying as well. It's not just shouting it into a void where you feel like you may even be burdening somebody. You're telling it to somebody that is there to help you. That's really powerful.
Yeah, it is powerful. And I think like maybe like, you know, in TNG with Troy, it was sort of like, I feel like the feelings are good, or they're this. It wasn't really the conversations like, how are you?
I love it when Culver says that's what you're doing, not how you're doing. Oh, yeah, so good.
That was really powerful to me too. I wrote that down as well. And I understand we don't necessarily want to dig into trauma on our TV shows, but how many times have you on this, you and I on this show talked about how this is crazy shit happening? I hope they have a counselor.
100%.
Because they're doing insane stuff.
Well, Discovery very much does dig into the trauma, and that's... I'm fine with that. I really, really like that. My thing just comes back to the relationship trauma that gets repeated and repeated and repeated.
Yeah.
Like the point that we made earlier. I don't think any of the stuff between like Michael and Booker is unbelievable. I think that's all completely in line with kind of where I've seen their characters come through. But there's a difference between it being believable and entertaining. Like it's, for me, it's not entertaining to watch this again and again and again and again.
And I think some people might feel the same about counsel type conversations. Like, how many times am I going to watch someone talk about their trauma with their dad?
No, completely. It's always the dad problem. Always. Yeah. Even Burnham actually has a massive dad problem. Oh, do you know that Burnham is Spock's adopted sister?
I'm sorry, what? No.
Yeah, so we'll move
on
to...
Who's Burnham?
Michael Burnham. Captain Burnham.
Oh, the one on screen right now. Yeah. Okay, hold on. So she is Spock's adopted sister.
Correct. Yes. Her parents died. Spock's parents adopted her. They grew up together.
They adopted a human
They adopted a human, young human child.
as a pet? Like for why?
The Vulcans could never adopt a human.
Why would anyone adopt a human?
I mean, Sarek married a human, presumably as a pet, because Spock is half human. His mother is completely human. So yeah, just adopted her, and yeah, she just it started to exist, and we had no idea that Spock had a adopted sister, but he does until he didn't. Because she went
so
to the
I
future.
remember seeing Spock's mom in Strange New Worlds, maybe.
Correct.
When he had to go through the marriage thing where her mom and dad came and had a chance to tell them what they really thought, and he had to keep his emotions in check.
Yeah, that's the one.
For some reason, that episode, he wasn't a Vulcan.
Oh,
and so
wait. Yeah. No, but
he
no,
was
I think
like
that was...
fully human in that episode.
Wasn't that Talin's parents?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so Spock's mom was like,
yes.
And so he finally tells her, I'm fully human right now. And they have this really beautiful exchange. And then he has to like hold the hot pot and stuff.
Correct. Yes,
okay.
That's it. Yeah.
Okay. So is she in the scene at that point in time, or how far in the future does she come along? The sister, this Captain Michael person.
Right. So by the start of Strange New Worlds, Discovery has already been flung into the future.
So
is
Spock
already gone.
knows about her.
Spock yeah. So Spock grew up with her. They grew up at the same time. Yeah, they grew up together.
But he never talks about her.
Never talks about it. Yeah. Hey, Discovery was classified. She gets mentioned in episode 1 of Strange New Worlds. Pike is like, "I'm sorry about
saying that." Oh,
I'm sorry about your
God.
sister, and he's like, "Yep, I'm sorry too. I feel her loss." They assume she's dead.
I remember us saying that, and how you're like, that is that's a little toss away for something else. And it was kind of like this weird thing. Oh, interesting.
So season 2 of Discovery is literally the search for Spock. Spock goes on like basically on a rampage because of this mystery thing. And Burnham has to find him, and that's where we find out
interesting
that, all of that
okay. So Spock lives his whole life just keeping his personal information on lockdown. He completely loses his sister, and if I remember correctly, his brother is Looney Tunes.
His brother is Cybok is Looney Tunes. Yeah, I think I wrote us in at it was when we did the fifth movie, the fifth TOS movie, The Final Frontier, is when Cybok is introduced, and one of the sins I wrote was, wow, we're suddenly introducing a sibling that we never knew Spock had. What's weirder is that it's not the only time this happens. Like, stop introducing siblings we didn't know he had.
So is she then, like, in your opinion, now kind of knowing this, and obviously she's raised by a human mother and a Vulcan father, and then she has
Vulcan.
a half, so is she... like, is her character Vulcan influenced in how she makes her choices?
Yeah, so in season 1, she is very Vulcan-esque and then gives into this human impulsiveness. So she presents as much more human.
Okay.
She presents as much more Vulcan and gradually finds her humanity as the season goes on. So if you know it's there, you can see it in some of her language and some of the very formal way that she presents some of her arguments, especially when she's like dealing with Rayna and she's dealing with Admiral Vance and stuff. And she will say things like, well, that's not logical, that's illogical, or something like that. But she's much more driven by her humanity than being Vulcan.
Okay. That's
but
really
I think Sonequa Martin Green does an incredible job of acting as a human that was raised among Vulcans. Like, I can feel it there.
Maybe that's the reason why I really enjoyed how she was communicating too. It was very factual.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
But then she also has that kind of more human, like, connecting with someone. Well, that's interesting. I did not know that.
Super interesting.
How
Forgot
would
to bring
I have
that
known
up.
That? Yep.
Speaking of interesting things that we need to bring up, Ambassador, how would you like to explain to the audience that this isn't the first time you've watched Discovery?
Oh, God. Okay. So, at the very beginning of watching, so as you guys know, we started off the episode, I open up Paramount Plus and I click on Discovery, and all of a sudden I'm like, wait a second, this looks familiar, and I couldn't figure it out. So I then started to have which is buried memory. I should probably go to counseling about it.
Mm-hmm.
Here I am making jokes about counseling. Sorry about that. It's just anyway. I realized that CinemaSins channel once did an episode of this show, and I watched it, sinned it, wrote some sins about it, released it, and then obviously just never thought of it again.
Shunted it out of the airlock. Not only have you seen the premiere episode, the first ever episode of Discovery, you've watched it multiple times and wrote a script about it.
I watched it multiple times and completely forgot about its existence.
Incredible. You were just like, wait, I know these people. I know that ship. I'm remembering desert. I'm remembering Klingons. Wait, is that Star Trek?
Yeah, I genuinely did this.
Incredible.
And I'm almost positive we were still producing episodes of Behind the Sins podcast at that time, and I think we talked about it on the show. So anyway,
just incredible.
I had to stop like bringing up the episode and then have like a little come to conversation with Ian about if any of that was going to ruin my ideas of this. It
Not
didn't.
At all. No.
It didn't at all.
Was there
No.
anything that you remembered, anything that related back? Because I said, don't worry, like, we are 900 years removed, and so much change has happened. This show is unrecognizable from season 1, episode 1. I cannot imagine anything feeling familiar.
Nothing felt familiar. No.
No.
I do think I kind of recognize the ship because or maybe like the vibe, because this is a darker toned show as far as how they're visually dressed. The opening 10 minutes of the first episode, when they're at that like gathering and they're all having drinks and they're celebrating that the Federation has come back together after it had fallen apart, which by the way, that was very jarring just to hear out of nowhere. Mm-hmm. Everyone else was prepared for it because they've been watching the show. I was like, what the hell happened?
Mm-hmm.
But anyway.
Deliberately didn't tell you about it. Mm-hmm. You did great.
I asked for no information.
Mm-hmm.
They were all wearing just different shades of navy and gray. Mm-hmm. In a navy gray room with navy gray drinks.
Oh my goodness, it was worse. The first
depressing.
The first iteration of this uniform was all grey, and it was just, I think the stripe was a different colour. I'm so glad they changed it to be red, yellow, blue, etc. It's a very drab uniform otherwise.
I didn't. Yeah. I was thankful that as we went, when we got to the bridge and we're seeing the yellow and the red uniforms, I was so relieved just to see something that was a little familiar. We have unique designs on how they're dressed. I really like the costuming once we got to. So I think I kind of remembered a little bit of the elements of the ship, but nothing from that first pilot episode really connected for me. I did recognize that I had seen the captain's visage before. Mm-hmm. But everything else was that I talked about, that I had a memory about, wasn't relative.
I'm pretty sure that Discovery doesn't even appear in the first episode. Or if it does, it's right at the end, because it's not the ship that we open with, that's for sure. But I blew my mind when you said, wait, I've seen this episode. And I was like, wait, how would you...
The show, not this episode.
Sorry, episode of the show. Yeah, the first episode. I was like, wait, you would have sinned it, wouldn't you?
I did. I sinned it.
That's amazing. Well, before we get into any sins, anything you want to, like any odd bits and pieces we can jump around, anything you want to kind of mention that you liked, disliked, or engaged you before we do some of our lovely nitpicky sins?
I think we should also talk about how these 2 episodes set up her new first officer. It's not Fred. I know I've said it before. I just want to make sure that everyone's really clear. Yeah. We think he's dead. I would love for him to not be dead. I'll be really happy if they change that decision. But anyway, they set up for Captain Raynor, who is very Shaw-like for me in a way.
Very Shaw-like. We need these corrupt stuff. He's not corrupt. We need these angry Star Trek captains. It's not a Starfleet show.
Crusty. He's crusty. Yeah.
We can't have a show without a grumpy male captain. Crusty old captain. He's so great. Part of me is shocked, jumping ahead to episode 2, that he accepts the lowly position of first officer. But I think I also buy it, because I'm like, he just wants to be out there. Like, I'm amazed he even got promoted to captain. I think there was just a lack of talent out there. And it was just like, well, we've got a ship, like, you're good enough, like, you can jump into it. I think he just wants to be a cowboy in space. And I kind of love him. I think he will be as loved as Shaw.
He's definitely going to die. I'll probably say that about every character, just so you know.
No, but I think he actually will die. Yeah, he'll go the way of Shaw.
He's got the Shaw-esque situation going on. I really loved the final scene of episode 2 where he zips up to accept.
Oh, yeah, let's go.
It was powerful. There's a lot of storytelling going on in these 2 episodes. as a brand new viewer, I really appreciate it. I learned so much about these characters, and it's not because I'm clever. It's not that. It is because the actors are doing an incredible job. The writing is giving just enough of what's coming up, happening now, and a little of what's happened in the past. I'm with you. I hope they don't spend too much time on the bookend thing going on. I hope that they just can kind of make a decision quickly and figure it out. Because it seems like Booker needs to be doing something else. I don't know.
Given on previous examples, my instinct is that we are far from over with the Booker Burnham thing, but I do completely agree. I was shocked. It's almost as if they knew that our lowly podcast was going to be throwing you into the deep end. Like, they did a really incredible job of being kind to people that somehow might be joining Discovery during its swan song season.
I loved it.
I think they introduced the only people that weren't really introduced were some of the bridge officers, like Detmer, Awaya Shakun. There's the tactical officer. Like, we didn't get some of those people, but I think that would have been way too much. The really, really big players, Admiral Vance, Burnham, Book, Saru, the Federation president, like, everyone gets an important part of the story to tell, and we get a really good introduction to each of them. I was so relieved that they decided to do it that way instead of, it's season 5, fuck it. If you haven't been with us up to this point, you're gonna struggle, bitches. I'm really glad that they were quite kind with it.
I do hope that we're a little surprised going forward, because they've set the stage by episode 2. We know we're looking for a map. We know we're looking for a thing, like a weapon. We know it's high stakes. We know that Lock, Shock, and Barrel are, quote unquote, one step ahead. And we know that there's a relationship between them. So are we going to be doing the expected storytelling where, we're going to see things and be like, yep, I saw that coming. That happened quite a bit, actually, where I would be like, this is going to happen. And then it happened while I was watching it. That's not abnormal for me. But I did get some things absolutely wrong. We should talk about predictions a little bit too. I feel like I'm excited for what they're going to do. It's a fun premise, the idea that they have to find these different keys, put them into the right order, probably
scavenger
translate
hunts
something.
are always fun in these things. Yeah,
and I think that's going to be fun. I hope it's fun for the crew. And I hope that it's going to make sense for the end of the series and also just their like imprint on Star Trek. So far, I'm really liking what I'm seeing.
That's awesome. I'm really, really glad. I had a feeling you would, especially episode 1, because I know how Discovery kind of likes to, how it likes to open itself up. My last like kind of big like kind of fundamental point about the first 2 episodes is that one of the quote unquote mistakes I think this season has learned from season 3 and 4 and season 2 a little bit is that Discovery, as this show that has this season-long arc, did an infuriating job of holding on to its mysteries. And it would milk and milk and milk and milk them, a lot like Picard season 2 did, and just milk them. And then the problem is, when you've spent 10 episodes getting there, your mystery had better be phenomenally satisfying at the end. And in season 3 specifically, it was a very frustrating answer to the mystery. Everybody had because the longer you drag it on, everyone's going to say, it's the Borg, it's the Q. You start reaching for things that you want to be satisfying. And when it ends up being something random, it's a bit frustrating. This gave us the mystery of what this item is, what it is they're searching for, what this red directive is about. For me, in a really satisfying way, it gave us all of the kind of the pieces to the puzzle. And now I'm left wondering what else is left to learn. And I'm really engaged. I'm not frustrated about what this thing is. I really want to know more.
I feel like we also have that benefit of watching Strange New Worlds, where we are experiencing the new Star Trek writers, because they kept us engaged in interesting ways. They would do early reveals and solve a problem and then introduce something new for us to sink our teeth into. And I remember feeling that nice pacing. And so I'm hoping that we can kind of rely on the writers and the team that are obviously working their butts off to bring in old references, make it make sense for the viewer that's new and the viewer that's old, and try to do something that's like legacy work. It's a lot of pressure, but I'm hopeful that we're going to have some fun with it in some way.
What you've just sparked, and we'll do predictions next, what you've just sparked is how clever Paul Stamets line. This is the engineer guy that's like, at the beginning of the episode, he's annoyed because they're going to shelve Discovery, they're shutting down the spore drive, and he helped invent the spore drive. And he's like, well, what's my legacy going to be now? And his through line in the first 2 episodes, at least, was what am I going to be remembered for? Like, the Soongs have this generation of androids, like, what a legacy to have. And that's very much the question that in your final season, you're going to be asking of yourself. What is Discovery's legacy to Star Trek? What is it's going to be? What will be its lasting impact on the franchise? And I love that. That's so clever. That's such a good idea.
Mind-boggling.
Yeah.
It really is. And to have to navigate the shift from the first couple of seasons into this new place, it's not easy. Writing sci-fi isn't easy.
No.
Capturing a new audience isn't easy. Pleasing the existing audience, even harder. And they're probably their worst critics, and they probably overthink things like you and I do when we write stuff. So I can't imagine how it feels. I'm just saying that what I watched, I really enjoyed. As far as like predictions, I think I nailed it. Personally, I think I nailed it.
Yes. Well, let's do it.
And then as far as pips, I think I'm going to give them all the pips because I had a really fucking good time.
That's amazing. For me, episode 1 is 4 pips. I think it does the job incredibly well. Sets up the mystery. It does everything you really want a season premiere to do. Episode 2 drops down to like 2.5 pips for me.
Oh shit!
Because
it's the relationship stuff.
We just got buried in the relationship stuff.
Yeah.
Tires screeched. We got a little bit more mystery, but I'm just like, man, make it a 6-episode season if you have to slow it down that much. But the predictions, Deneé, for the Red Directive. The Red Directive is either an organization or a policy that's been put in place. Something urgent. Correct. Quite a wide net, but correct. An emergency happened. Correct. I think I basically had the same thing. I got a bit more specific that it will be something to do with blood, which was correct. It's about the blood of everybody in the galaxy and the fact that we all come from the same blood.
It is not about blood at all.
Nailed it.
Nope.
DNA.
Nope.
Yep.
Absolutely
all about DNA.
Not
Totally.
even. No,
Yep.
because not every creature has blood.
Nope. Even the ones that don't have some.
Absolutely not.
Yep.
That doesn't count. Nope.
Absolutely. That was my prediction. Something to do with blood, and nailed it. Under the twin moons, you believed that they were going to go to a planet. Somebody was going to fall in love with the romantic view of two moons above them. Two blue moons above them.
Not fall in love. They were going to be like, they were going to love
exchange
each other
a
and
glance.
exchange a loving glance. That super happened between Captain and Hoofboy.
No, you misinterpreted that completely.
Love is love. It doesn't have to be
romantic. I think you
romantical.
specified romantic love. I think
definitely was
Let's
thinking
play back
more
the tape.
romance.
Yes.
Absolutely, 100%.
There was plenty of romance. None of it happened beneath twin moons. I think mine was what was mine? It was the moons were going to be. Oh, the next piece of the puzzle was going to be found. I was so close. It was the next piece of the puzzle, or the next piece of the mystery, was going to be found in a star system where every planet had 2 moons. Which I shot myself in the foot by being too specific.
Yeah, you were kind of close because it was very how many places have 2 moons, but even I was wrong even with this because this place has 3 moons, but it has 2 moons that are locked together. I want to hear the science behind that anyway. Before we get into the sins, I know we keep saying this, but I did get, and I made this in my notes, won't make any sense to you, Deneé, but I am irritated that they didn't specifically mention the Arsenal of Freedom, which would have been another TNG callback. That security system where you get the wave of drones that come in, they get blown up, and then another wave comes in. It is identical to a security system that is being sold or like kind of pitched in TNG. So they go down to this planet, they get trapped by the probes, and the way that they get around it is by saying, I'll buy it. Like, it's fine. Like, the demonstration was great. We'll purchase your stuff. And I really wanted them to be like, oh yeah, we recognize this weapon system. We just need to barter with them because it's a demonstration. But I think what it actually is that this security system was actually purchased and used on this planet. And I think was put there, obviously, by the Promelians. But it was just like, I can't say for certain it's a callback to the Arsenal of Freedom, but I'm 99% certain it is. And it's just, feels like it's going to be a TNG heavy referential fest. And was there a tribble in the background?
Just fucking chilling out.
Was it really a tribble, though?
I think, this happens in season 4. Somehow the tribbles get reintroduced. I can't remember how, but it was absolutely a tribble that was just walking around the deck.
That seems very dangerous. I mean,
You would
can
think
they
so.
be neutered?
I think
Or
they need to be.
spayed?
Yeah.
Because there wouldn't just be one. And it was free roaming as well.
Just wobbling around the ship. Yeah. I love it.
Okay. It just isn't. Maybe that's a sin. Maybe that should transition us to the sins.
Well, with that bumper review of the first 2 episodes of Discovery Season 5, it's Battle Stations Black Alert. Let's head into engineering to send the spore drive. Do the beam out.
Warning. Warp core collapse in 10 seconds.
This is the part of the show where we remind ourselves that no TV show is without sin, even our beloved Star Trek. Ambassador, after you.
First sin, Fred's dead. What the fuck? How do you introduce this character and then you just remove him from the show?
Why go through all of that effort of the hair and the makeup?
It was so good.
So perfect.
It was so perfect.
And you fucking kill him.
I could literally see his hair popping up and then seeing like the mechanism underneath
yes,
it.
Exactly.
I could see what was happening with this character, and it was so
honestly,
good.
It's heresy, but they should have just recast Data as him in Picard.
Oh my god, yes!
It would have been so great. Don't worry about de-aging Brent Spiner. Bring in this guy.
I am not exaggerating. If I had to rewatch one part and one part only from both the episodes 1 or 2, and I wanted to really rewatch one, it would be that one.
It really would.
It felt so intentional. Like every single thing that actor did.
A love letter.
Or wrote was, yes, it was so good. And I just want to see that every week.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know how he isn't on the ship.
Already.
Anyway.
The sin is that they killed Fred in episode 1 and he wasn't brought back in episode 2.
Yeah.
If he's brought back in any other episode, I will take away 0.5 of that sin because they didn't use him in episode
I'll give
2.
all the sins back. I will trade anything to bring back Fred. I really do. Just amazing. There's a lot of sins in that moment as well, which is like, why? I mean, the cliche of he picks up a gun that suddenly doesn't work and then he picks up a gun that does work to progress, to prolong the scene. His guards aren't worth shit. He's a fucking android. Why wasn't he snapping necks?
I was so confused by that.
Be an android for a minute and just murder these people. His defenses weren't shit.
Yeah. Having watched Data do all the things, it's almost like Fred then, in retrospect, deserved to die because if he doesn't know how to protect himself, have a gun. You are an overlord of an underground place that with magical.
This isn't the first deal that's gone wrong for you. This isn't the first time you've encountered shit.
Unless we're to believe that the guards, take away all weaponry, he's never had a situation where someone's tried to throw hands before, which is so stupid. Anyway.
Right. I mean, you buy it if there's something really special about what's the name of them? Molly and Lockie and Molly, Lock and Key.
Lock, Shock, and Barrel.
Them two. If there's something really special about them, there's not really that we know yet. They're just good at kung fu and can shoot people. And this is the thing that takes him out. This guy, he said it himself. He said, I haven't seen this kind of technology in over 600 years, which means he's been around for at least 600 years. If he's an Alton Soong-like android, that means he's been around for, I think, 1,000 years, possibly. How in all of that... No, it wouldn't be 1,000. Sorry, it would be 600-700. Anyway, fucking long time. And somehow this is the thing that defeats him. Really disappointing. So many levels.
So much to unpack in that scene.
My main sin, and it would be reluctant. I don't care how cool it is. Captain Burnham, you cannot, I don't care what century you're in, hold on to a ship while it's at warp. It broke me. The acceleration of jumping from still to faster than light. I don't know how you're physically holding on. Whatever suit she had on was doing some work. And yes, it's cool. Yes, it's very cool. But it's some utter bull nonsense.
The part that really got me is when she landed on the ship and it kind of accelerated or something. In my imagination, her entire back snapped at the torso and the back of her head touched the back of her feet because she would have just bent backwards. Like she would have instantly been snapped.
The last thing to go through her mind would have been her nose. Like everything just gets turned to jello. I don't know how good the inertial dampeners are on that suit. It's just blew my mind a bit. It's also one of my most frustrating sins in all of television and cinema history. It's the in medias res. It's in the middle of the action, middle of the story, 4 hours earlier. Because all it is it's the acknowledgement of a lack of faith in your audience. Because it's like, we want to start with this diplomatic meeting where we're talking about the Federation, we're introducing people, we're talking about shit, and we have Burnham doing the mission in the Cone of Silence room. And then what you're saying is that is too boring for the audience, so we need to start with some action to get them engaged or else they'll switch off. And for me, that's so disingenuous because you're just going, we see this scene happen, it literally just repeats the scene. So all you're doing is saying that you haven't got the attention span to appreciate this. Have some action first. It annoys me so much.
Chad is saying that they're inside a warp bubble, and that's different.
I don't care.
I just wanted to say, I'm learning here.
No, I get it.
There's tech I don't understand. There are fucking space mushrooms in this show. I have things to learn.
They create a stable warp bubble, and that's
pretty fucking
warps
cool.
the time. It warps time and space around you, and that's how you go. There is still acceleration. I'm sorry. There is still acceleration. It is still insane that you're surviving inside the warp bubble, at warp, whatever. Some shit is happening.
My next sin is actually gonna tie into someone that mentioned the saxophone in the chat as a sin, but she does like to talk to herself while she cannot stop her dialogue. She has such a strong inner dialogue. Captain is regularly talking to herself. Well, that's gonna hurt. Well, you better hurry up. I've got a saxophone. And I'm just like,
fun. There's a little bit of lower decksness to it that feels a little out of place.
Yeah. But at the same time, having never actually been in any of these situations, I don't know, like maybe this is just some people do that. And this cat, right. Yeah, as if we need to fill the space with dialogue when there's 1,000 things for us to see on the screen.
Yeah.
And I could look in any corner of this moment, and I'm just going to take the initial dialogue, like where she's just, I didn't expect to be doing this morning, as she's digging into the ship. I'm thinking, are you trying to give us something more in the scene? She's writing this I can look at 50 things going on. There's this little glowy square part. I'm looking at a cool ship that has separate nacelle parts inside
there's enough
of
going
a
on here.
green bubble thing. I don't need to fill in. And that's just, I guess what it felt like was just like banter filler. And I didn't care about it until it happened multiple times.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess that's just her personality. She slammed into something. She's like, that's going to hurt. Like,
that hurt. That wasn't great. I was like, that should have killed you. Damn it. For me, my instinct is that Discovery has been critiqued for being very serious and very dour. And perhaps this is an attempt to be a bit more lighthearted and to show that they can have fun. Cool. Yeah. The other thing is just as a writing thing, it's just let's have fun and let's be a bit fast and furious. And it's like, we know she isn't going to die here, and we're going to communicate we know that by letting her know that she's not going to die here as well. So she's going to have fun with it. Yeah. This should be really serious, but it isn't. Don't worry, people. I got like a little like kind of a fundamental mission sin here where like they're approaching this Romulan ship. They know someone else is kind of like aboard it or after it, and they send 3 people on this crucial galaxy-ending mission, 2 of which are incapacitated very quickly. Send everyone! I can't think of a logical reason to not flood this Romulan ship with 200 people. Get there. I know they only have the crew of the Discovery, but send as many people as you can to do this thing. You're very lucky Burnham did as well as she did.
I agree with you. And part of it for me became a little bit of a disjointed kind of vibe. But it was more so when they went to the planet in the second one. Why are just the 2 of them going? Why not send an entire team down there who's setting up a base camp at the perimeter to be able to help from the ground? Yeah. Because they're like, oh, you have to walk. I'm sorry. you all have probably like drones of your own that you
They
could
literally
attach
have
some kind of a
drones.
harness to
Yeah.
and fly you in.
They have drones that
all
they do
have
for scanning and repairs and stuff.
Hoverboards, something. There's
Why don't we have hoverboards? It's the 3200s, people.
You're telling me that the beaming problem exists in all of that's an
Always,
instant cliche sin, and I get that, and I get that we don't want to engage with that every single episode, then we never see anything.
Yes.
It's the walk and talk that needs to happen between the two of them so that they have time to have their connection. I understand from a storytelling perspective why they want them to walk. I understand even from a visual perspective. We want to show this jungle. We want to be in it for a minute. But I have the hardest time believing that in a situation and in a place in the future where you can take a blurb of matter and say, become a dish, become a potato, or whatever you're talking about earlier, that they can't say, carry me on a special drone harness into the middle of the thing, and then they get to do that. So
just give me 3 days along this road. I will travel.
At the very least, have a team on the edge that is able to do phaser support or something. And they have really fucking cool guns too. Did she have a phaser that turned in, like she pulled it out and it became like a shotgun at one point?
They all
fucking cool.
That's the programmable matter thing, is that you can change the phaser will just appear in your hand. It will change into a sniper rifle. Yeah, it'll do whatever you want.
Then you
but no
shouldn't
hoverboard.
have to just walk. You shouldn't have to tumble through jungle environments, breathing whatever was floating through the air. You shouldn't have to do that.
I knew that those particles in the air would bug you. It's amazing.
It did, because I immediately became
itchy.
snow?
Is it the people? I was like, that's going to be like the ash of the people that died, isn't it, or something? I mean, do it the 22nd century way and use a shuttle. I don't know why they couldn't just fly in there, but
exactly.
Anyway. Lots of interesting things going on there. Rolling back to episode 1, the Dadmiral, Admiral Vance, who I love to bits.
Did you just call him the Dadmiral?
That's not me. That is the internet calls him the Dadmiral.
Why?
He's very much a dad character, like in season 3 and 4. He's very stoic. I would almost say like granddad. Like he's very calm and it's kind of like when the adult walks into the room and the kids are playing and everyone starts to pay attention. It's like, oh, somebody with responsibility is actually here. It
did look like
he's very important.
There was a scene in the end of episode 2 where he looked like he was folding socks and putting some stuff away.
Yeah, he has.
And he had his
kids
picture of his family up on the wall.
Yes. Yeah.
And I was like, oh my God, yes, show me some fucking dirty laundry. Let's go.
Let's do it. Yeah.
So that's the
programmable
Dadmiral,
matter.
that guy?
Yeah, he's the Dadmiral.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Totally makes sense.
So he's setting up the mission with Burnham and Rayna, and Burnham's like, who's in charge of the mission? And he's just like, can't you just figure it out? Like,
So
can't you
stupid.
just work together? No, that's not how the chain of command works. You cannot have you cannot have 2 leaders in this situation. Like, we can be as ideological as we want, and that everything is collaborative. If that worked, you wouldn't have ranks, you wouldn't have experience. Sorry, Admiral, you have to pick a leader, or else shit like that avalanche that nearly killed 1,000 people happens.
You're not wrong. I wrote that down too. It was infuriating. It is one of the reasons why sometimes on a group project, I will politely back out of them, because somebody has to be the final decision maker. This is why in business, you never go 50-50.
Nope.
You go 49-51, because somebody has to be the one who makes the final call. And yeah, maybe you don't agree with it, but somebody has to be that higher rank.
And it does matter, but not as a point of like pride who's in charge. It's just somebody has to make that final call, because us as humans, we are polarizing. We will dig into our side of an argument no matter what logic is put in front of us. It's too dangerous.
I think that obviously, and I wrote this down, actually, let me see if I can find it. It doesn't matter. I'll just tell you what I wrote down was, I know that the show is doing this so that we have tension and to show us the difference between both characters.
Yeah.
I totally get that. And it is a way to make immediate conflict, but it was ridiculous and absolutely silly.
He was so disinterested. He was like, kids, figure it out. I gotta fold some laundry. You pick who's in charge. And I'm like, they're not gonna decide. It's amazing.
I have a couple silly sins I'll do back to back. One in the very beginning of episode 1 when they are drinking those drinks and the person who serves the drinks pops their bubble with their fucking finger. Get your fucking finger out of my drink.
It's the future. Everything's fine.
No.
Everything's disinfected. It's okay.
No.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
No.
Triple
no.
filtered.
I don't care where we are in the future. That's my drink. I'll fucking pop the bubble with whatever I
Stop
want to pop it
fingering my
with when
drink.
I'm ready. If like, can you imagine just being served and be like, I know this is a fun part to pop it. She goes pop, 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 pop. Like she was just doing bubble wrap.
Hey, I went to the effort of making this drink. I'm going to have the fun and pop it.
That was so stupid. No, don't fucking touch my drink.
No,
I would be like, give me another one, please. I don't know you, and I don't know what you just put your finger.
it's fair. My sin in that moment was the explaining the jokeness of it, like just explaining the speckles and the blue and like and I was like, okay, cool. If you have to explain the joke, it wasn't that good to begin with. We love your clever drink, but quit it. It's okay.
Yeah.
We get it.
The
It's
other silly
festive.
sin I was thinking about when we were talking about the arguing back and forth, the captains arguing back and forth when they were on the motorcycles. I would have loved it if when Captain Crispy,
Raina?
Crunchy, what did we call him earlier?
Crusty.
Krusty, yeah.
Captain Crusty.
Can we call him Captain Krusty from now
Can we
on?
not?
Yay! When he goes boop boop and Captain Krusty like beams away,
Yeah.
I would have loved it if just a beat later the motorcycle would have just fallen over, but it didn't.
Yes. I
Oh,
was kind of
man.
like, man, you dick, just leaving that bike behind. You've got to return that to the shop.
So funny. I mean,
You're renting
obviously we
that
have
thing.
kickstands. I get it.
It would have been
But
amazing.
still, I would have loved it if he just fucked off and didn't care. It
there
would have
should
been
be
really
consequences to like the beaming immediately in and out, but I'm sure they have force fields and shit. There was some frustrating bullshit, and this happens a lot with Star Trek and Discovery, is that they don't quite do the work on satisfactorily finding the bad guy. So the consequence of saying it's impossible to find them, like Burnham's like, Raina, you've got to back off, and Raina's like, but if I back off, then they'll get away and it will take too long to find them. Like, you hype up the moment of that so much, and then Book comes in with an immediate solution, and it's that all of the warp trails are going to different places. Out of all of the warp trails, all of the dummies, there's only one that's going to a broker. There's only one that makes sense. And if I'm these dodgy people, I'm sending 50 warp trails to 50 different brokers. I'm not sending any of them to Federation space. I'm not sending them anywhere that makes sense. Everything will not make sense. And Booker just like swoops in, finds this one warp trail. It can only be that. And of course, it's the one that works. And the problem when you make the mystery that easy to solve is I know that you're only doing it to get Book in, and it kind of shits on the tension of the moment previously, because I'm like, just drop the tractor beam, you're going to find them. It's frustrating.
It is
But I get
frustrating.
it. It's in service of the story. Fine. It's not fine.
I'm going to give a sin back for the ship blipping back out into space and taking along some sand with it. That looked really fucking cool.
Loved that. When Discovery reappears in space, yeah, and it's covered in, I love that. Just like, of sand that comes with it. So good.
This might be for me the biggest sin of episode 1,
Oh, okay.
which is if Fredata scanned the book, why did
Yes.
Fredata die for the book? He already had the information in his head forever. He doesn't need it anymore.
Interesting.
Like once he's seen it, he has all the information he needs. In fact, they shouldn't have ever let him open it. I'm guessing their curiosity, they needed him to open it. He opens it. But Fredata could have he could have just handed it back over to them.
Well, yeah. Well, at that point, they're letting him read it because they don't know what they've got. They know it's important, but they don't know.
But why would he even be like, here's some latinum, go? If they said, we'll take it to someone else, he could have been like, 4 latinum and then let them go. But the whole thing was like,
Yeah.
we know you're nervous about something, and I get it, but it just
They're superpowered.
Chad is saying that he's a collector, and I do get that, but if he's wanting to use that
No.
information for something, like he's already got what he needs.
No,
But I guess it's true, as a collector, you do want to have it, sure.
But the episode doesn't tell us he wants it because he's a collector. He's a fencer. Like his plan is to buy it cheap and sell it expensive. Like, and I think there's a bit of overconfidence there where he's like, these two people shouldn't be able to take me out. Because guess what? They shouldn't have done. The only reason they win is because of the script. So I think he's a bit overconfident about these uppity people, and he thinks that he can outmaneuver them. So I kind of get it. But I'm trying to. Maybe it's like an authenticity thing. Like,
I mean,
he
literally,
can't
it
sell
was a
on
book.
his knowledge. too, but I think he could have done. I think he could have given them the book back.
He could have been like, I just got this important thing. Here's
Or
how I got
burn
it. Scan my retinal,
Yeah.
history. You'll see that I had to open a puzzle to get it. It's a legitimate Romulan. Like, he could have taken the information and done something with it, but at that point he had the sweet sauce. He didn't need to die.
I think in just to sum up, he's not as smart as an android should have been in that situation. Tilly gets drunk on Andorian champagne, and the sin would be, unless it comes from the famous champagne region of Andoria, it shouldn't be called champagne.
I also don't quite understand why none of the people just beamed off of those motorcycles. We eventually find out that the sand was causing interference for the boy and the child, so that our captain could save a child, because to really just show how caring women are, we always have to save children in our content.
Save the kids. Fuck them if they're not kids.
Yep. Totally. Just
Wait, no. Yeah, no, okay, that wording was poor. Yeah.
a lot of visuals
Yeah,
all
a lot,
of a sudden.
lot of stuff happened there. Yeah, okay. Yeah.
Anyway, I don't understand. Like, they literally turn around and they start to leave quickly from the avalanche, and I do not understand why they just weren't beamed away. At that point, they weren't even needed on the ground anymore, except that she has to save a kid. But still,
Beam them all up at once.
just beam them up.
Beam them up. I don't know why you couldn't. Between two ships, I think you could have beamed up 1,000 people in time. Was my sin in that moment? I was like, fuck the avalanche, just beam them up. I'm kind of worried about where that rock goes once the Antares. It's kind of like a well, what now moment. The Antares and the Discovery are both nose in the dirt, and as soon as the avalanche stops, they're okay, what now? Because as soon as we move, this avalanche continues, right? The rocks are still there.
I think it's just it went sideways instead of forwards. Is the idea.
Fair enough. I kind of misunderstood the
deflected
scope
it.
of how big these ships are as well, which is beautiful. But that is a beautiful moment. Just seeing them both nosedive in the ground was all of the sins, but incredible. I had a bit of a nitpicky one where I had a philosophical disagreement with Tilly. Admiral Vance comes in and says that Tilly shouldn't be digging around in the restricted archive and trying to crack the case. And Tilly says, I just think that the crew and Burnham have a right to know what they're risking their lives for. Nope, I'm sorry, that's not how the military works, should have been the answer. The whole point, and Starfleet is essentially a branch of the military. The point is your duty, and you talk about doing your duty and the uniform and stuff, is risking your life even though you don't know why you're risking it. The honor there is following the orders. You know that this is saving the galaxy. Do it. You don't need to know the why. That's not the point of why you do the job that you're doing. If the information is going to help you complete the mission, yes, that's a good reason to know the information. But not just, they have a right to know. No, they don't.
My next sin would be answering the question, do you think we're wasting time, with the answer, I think the world is bigger than our own corner of it.
What does that mean? What does that mean, Burnham?
I just feel like there could have been something a little more.
Raina should have said, that's fucking dumb.
I just wrote, whatever that means,
Use some imagination in the writing. Come on, blah, blah, blah.
It was interesting, though, to see them immediately called to the carpet.
Oh, Raina?
That they took the time in that second episode to kind of go, your actions have consequences. Here's that conversation.
Yeah, I did like that.
That was interesting.
But I agree. It's a bit hypocritical because Kovic is fuck 'em, set to kill. Set the phasers to kill. I don't care who's on that ship. Will saving this 1,000 people affect our chances of tracking Laurel and Hardy? And yet Kovic isn't called onto the carpet because he's a higher power. Raina is saying the same stuff. He's just putting it into action. So it did feel a little bit unfair to be berating Raina for basically doing what Kovic told him to do, which was stop them at all costs.
But there's the mission, and then there's how you do the mission, okay?
It's not what you said, it's how you said it that hurt my feelings.
I think I would sin how many times during the watching of this, of episode 2, I predicted that Saru is going to die, and
so many times.
You were yelling at me, no, stop it. Can you put that as a quick outtake at the end of this episode of just...
compilation?
You were like, no, stop it. Quit it.
Stop it. No, because narratively it made sense, but I would have been so mad. It would have been my biggest sin of the episode.
So
it's such a shitty way to kill him.
So the sin is watching shows with bad friend that will not stop trolling you.
Yes, stop it. Yeah, I'm
Once I
sending
caught
this.
wind that you cared for this character, I was like, oh, this is
Oh,
great.
I'm not letting up. He's going to die every episode. Yeah, the sin is the show setting up somebody is going to die so that my friend will berate me and tease me about it.
Where are the personal shields that we got to see? Like, there were some on the motorcycle. There were some on her spacesuit.
Yeah.
So when, Hoofman and Captain were running around being shot by drones.
Yeah.
Why not just fucking put on your spacesuit and have a shield?
Yeah, they had the tactical BDSM gear on, so I don't know why they didn't have the shields as well. Good point.
So strange.
Good point.
It was really like a situation where this show must be frustrating at times to kind of go, you have this tech, you show it to us in this way, but when it makes sense to protect yourself, you don't use it because you want us to be on the edge of our seat. So.
It's the most challenging part of setting a series in a time frame where you know the technology is so advanced. You're just going to open yourself up to so many, well, why wasn't it used on this occasion? A frustrating one for me, and again, it leads back to mysteries that are mystery light. So they get to the statue, they have 4 verses of this Romulan poem, they don't have the 5th verse. They go through this convoluted logic of the back door, the secret entrance, which we were told about in Picard season 1, I think. And that Romulans let their friends come in through the back door instead of the front door. Long story short, why wasn't your first guess to look around the totem object thing? You shouldn't have had to solve a riddle to just visually look at the back of the thing and then underneath it. Like,
underneath
the riddle,
it was pretty surprising.
Well, the riddle just, for me, doesn't justify just looking. Like, step 1 is look around. And I think they would have maybe figured it out just by looking around and, like, looking underneath it, then get to the complicated riddle.
I don't know. For me, the whole thing was solving what they solved under the time pressure of the grid coming back online.
Yeah.
Was either a reminder about how poorly I perform under pressure.
Yeah.
Or it's a bit ridiculous they read something in Romulan, they interpret it, they solve it, they figure out that it's bioluminescent, they realize that the Romulans write in this kind of way, then they access their own memory, their own trusted knowledge of Romulan history.
Yeah.
To kind of realize, so there's like a lot of just leaps in logic, which, I mean, they do make sense. It's a really interesting puzzle. That the whole reason that they have a back door is because of how the Romulans were. So not only does it need to be X amount of sentences, because it's this kind of a poem or whatever, or mystery or puzzle, clue, whatever, it also is going to be hidden somewhere. And I'm like, well, how do you know that it's right there? How do you make that decision? And then, like you said, why would you not go around it? Well, yeah, why would you assume to go underneath it? How thank God Hoof Boy is strong, you know?
Well, and the other part of it is, like, why is this even solvable? Like,
this comes up every time that we talk about a weapon of this kind of power. This was the Picard thing. That thing is like, if it's so dangerous, just don't talk about it.
Yeah,
Stop.
It's like, Indiana Jones, Story of the Explorer. It's all of these like world-ending things. Who is leaving the clues, and what is it about solving this clue that makes you worthy? So, what is it about solving this Romulan clue that makes you that makes you worthy of this weapon? Like, if you have to hide the weapon, don't leave a trail of breadcrumbs to it, or if you're worried about who gets hold of it, make sure the puzzles prove that they are worthy. Like, actually, the Indiana Jones one is a great example because he doesn't go for the richest, the most extravagant looking cup. He goes for the cheapest looking one. But it's just like, what is it about this poem that makes them worthy of finding Trill? It's just, maybe that'll all come to fruition at some point.
I don't know.
Well, I think that's pretty much it. I've covered all of my big sins and my nitpicky sins. I could continue going on about Book and Michael, but I will not continue going on about how that romance is irritating to me.
There was one sin that we mentioned while we were watching it. You actually mentioned it, and I agreed with you, which was when the captain tells, I just forgot his name. I went Sarge, Sludge,
Raina?
Saru.
Saru.
I'm so sorry. This is just what my brain does. I'm trying to find words that make me get there.
Mhm.
He's leaving to go get married and start a better life and not die on the ship and probably ex machina later on. And she says, "We're never changing this room." And I think you said, what a waste of space.
What a fucking waste of a room. Like, this is a period where, like, TOS, like, people are bunking together and, like, the captain's cabin is tiny. So, I don't know, what a waste of a room. Why are you holding that room together for a person that isn't supposed to be coming back to the ship unless they're shit at their new job? Don't hold a sanctuary for people. Move on. Move on, people. Don't hold on to the past. Remember it and then move on.
At the very least, it should have been turned into like a science study because there's so many plants. That room was so steamy.
That's what happens when you don't clean. It grows plants. Well, Ambassador, are you ready to reinstate the Captain's Ready Room and do some predictions at the end of this bumper episode?
Let's do it. Let's do it. Let's do it.
To the Captain's Ready Room. Welcome to the Captain's Ready Room, where we hear our predictions for the rest of the season and bask in our Q-like glory if anything we've previously predicted has come true. Ambassador, any specific predictions for the rest of the season or episode 3 specifically?
Do we know what it's called yet? Can we use that as a launching point?
Oh, shit. I do. 1 second.
Oh,
Please hold, caller.
Easy prediction. They're going to find the next piece.
The next piece of the puzzle. I predict they're going to trill because they told us that at the end of the episode.
Yeah.
Episode 3 is called Jinaal. Jinaal.
That gives me nothing.
Jinaal. What do you mean? That's perfectly logical.
Do you know what that word means?
No, absolutely not.
It could be a person. It could be a sex act. It could be... That's just it. Those are the only two options.
That's the only 2 options. That's it. You've covered everything. Yep.
Yeah. It could be a place. It could be a ritual. It could be...
I think it's a person because...
Jinaal?
Jinaal, yeah. Because Trill is where the Trill people are, and the Trill are Dax, Jadzia Dax. So they're the people that have, like, the symbionts that are living inside of them. So...
Oh, yeah, okay.
I think Jinaal, because we kind of have this, like, Jadzia Dax, Ezri Dax, Jinaal, there's Curzon. Jinaal feels like a Trill-ish name. And if this ends up being Jinaal Dax, I will lose my shit. That would be incredible. If Dax is still alive, that would be insane. I would love that so much. So that's my wild off-the-rails prediction, is that we're going to meet Jinaal Dax.
I have a lot of predictions about like where relationships are going to be heading.
Not interested.
I'm trying to figure out which, if I was going to do a prediction for a relationship, where that would kind of go. But it seems like that's an easy one.
I think we're going to have a funeral instead of a wedding.
Some of the, because Cebu's going to die.
Yeah, Saru. Yeah. I mean, I don't even want to touch Book and Michael predicting what's going to happen with that relationship. I think they're going to stay actually separated this time. I think they'll stay apart and find love for each other that is healthier than them being quote-unquote together, is what I would predict.
Yeah, but then you've got like Red Curly Tilly, yeah. Who's probably going to get that date. Mm-hmm. But I don't know if this is more like season arc or they're going to be episode related. So I'm trying to kind of like access that part of my brain that will get more specific. Are we going to have the expected captain puts the first officer in his place moment right out of the gate?
Yeah, consistently. I hope so.
Because obviously these two go about things differently, but she wants that.
As you should for a number 1.
I'm going to predict that Fred is going to come back in this episode.
The only relationship that we're interested in.
That's the only thing I want to have happen.
My overall prediction for where the season is going is I think it's going to follow the trope of this technology that created everything, I think was originally intended to wipe the slate clean. And I think it accidentally created life. And the progenitors were claiming after the fact that this was always their intent. I think they're trying to find the meaning of life and existence. And it's going to be nothing. And it's going to be really jarring that the meaning of life is actually a bomb.
This seems like what happened with Picard a bit too, doesn't it? This like idea that
the end of the world android apocalypse thing. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I feel like you're probably right. The weapon isn't going to be what it's supposed to be, but we're not going to find that out in season 2 or episode 2. 3. Episode 3.
No, yeah. That's my overall season 5 conclusion.
Yeah,
is what I
let's
would
get to that point when everyone has to turn to each other and say, that's right. The mission is family. The mission is love.
Family. The movies. Yeah.
There is no one that made us. We can go back to our depressing existence.
Yeah.
And whatever faith we want to have to make our lives a little bit easier every day.
Yeah.
Let's get a drink. Don't put your fucking finger in it. And then let's go on a date.
I think they may undo some of the work from the chase, and it's not going to be that we're all connected. It's going to be something different. Although maybe they want to keep that connection thing. Maybe because Star Trek is all about like community and we're all the same. Maybe they're going to double down on it, and maybe the thing is that we're all from the same people.
Is anybody on the ship spory?
I mean, at this point, Paul Stamets is pretty spory because he had to plug himself into the spore drive to navigate properly.
Okay.
That's
What if life was created by spores?
And that gives Paul a reason to continue his legacy.
And so he walks into this area to become the spore god that can continue whatever needs to be continued, maybe fulfilling some sort of timey-wimey wackiness.
Yeah, there's got to be a full circle moment that happens.
Well, that's that. Thanks, guys, for joining us for today's episode of Captain's Pod. We're going to be doing episode 3 next week. You can join us live on Friday at 12:30 Central on Twitch. That's twitch.tv/CinemaSins live. If you would like to join the chat that helps to decide what we do, because we are puppets.
That's exactly how the show... Everything that you've heard today was actually decided by other people. We're just the Fred puppets.
So join us next week if you're able to. Otherwise, watch it pop into your feed.
Yes.
And thank you guys so much for listening and recommending us to your friends and other people who like Star Trek and who might be watching Discovery.
Yes, I hope you enjoyed that bumper double episode. We'll be back to just doing one episode for the rest of the season unless they do something weird. So yes, join us next week for episode 3 of season 5, Discovery Jinaal. And until next week, I'm Captain Ian. It's Let's Fly from me.
Oh, yeah. And it's Do You Want the Pebbles or the Mountain from me?
Live long and podspa.
Thanks for listening. Want to connect with the show? Our hailing frequencies are always open through captainspod@cinemasins.com. Like, comment, and subscribe on your podcast player of choice, and be sure to visit cinemasins.com.
Oh, no, I can't hear you. Oh, I hear you. You sound like a robot. I don't know if you can hear me. I can, like, it sounds garbly. Shit. Let me test my internet. Oh, there you are. I can see you moving. I can't hear you, though. I can hear you. Yay! And it doesn't seem like you're not frozen or anything.
Oh, golly. I just need everything in this house to fucking hold together for like a year. That's it. I don't need much from it. I just need the TV, the computers, the internet, my Xbox to hold together for a fucking year.
Is that too much to ask?
Too much to ask. Holy shit. This wasn't in the outtakes for last week, but spoiler alert, everybody, for this week's outtakes. What you didn't hear last week is that we were going to do yesterday's Enterprise, and we were going to carry on with time travel and not do Discovery. And then there was an uproar from both sides.
In the live chat, yeah.
In the live chat, and from the ambassador, where it was like, hey, you should do Discovery. And then people were like, you shouldn't do Discovery. And we've decided to do Discovery. I'm so glad. I'm so glad we're doing it.
I wasn't paying attention to the release date. So if the chat hadn't said, what about Discovery? I wouldn't have, it wouldn't have been on my radar. I would have just been like, yep, we're just going to keep going with all the things.
But I'm really glad we're doing season 5 and not season 4, because season 4 technically came out since we've been doing Captain's Pod. But from what
interesting.
Yeah, season 4 was, the back end of season 4 was amazing. I think you would have been very frustrated by the first half of season 4. And the non-spoilery kind of stuff I'm seeing online about the first 2 episodes of season 5 is that it's very kind to people that are jumping into Discovery for the first time. So I think this might work out really perfectly.
We've accidental ourselves into the perfect scenario.
We've accidental this entire pod.
When I was in traffic yesterday, with Iris, there was this person that had like a very large spoiler on the back of their car.
Was it about season 5 of Discovery?
No.
Or was it like The Sixth Sense?
No.
Like the end of Titanic?
A fin.
Oh, a literal spoiler.
A literal spoiler.
Derp derp.
So she asked about it. I said, we don't see those on cars unless they're usually the ones that go fast. And I said, do you want to guess what they're for? And she said, I think it's because that the fin helps with the way that the air moves around the car.
Wow, that's amazing.
And I was like, yes, that's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
And she said, does it help? It maybe helps to make it go faster. And I was like,
interesting.
I said, where did you learn aerodynamics? We get to the end of the journey, and I think she says, if you could get a sports car, would you? And I said, well, in a pretend world, yes. And it would be something called a Corvette. I just like the way that they look a lot. And there's a specific one called the Stingray that I think is really cool. And that's what I would get if I lived in this fantasy world. Fast forward, this morning, she's playing with her new Barbie doll. And I was like, oh my gosh, I have a box that came from when my grandmother passed away from the basement of old Barbie stuff. And I think the old original Barbie Corvette is in there. So I go out to the garage. I pull out this box. I plop it down in the living room, and yep, here it comes. This gorgeous old Barbie Corvette that her doll can fit inside of because it's Barbie. And oh man, that was cool. Like, look, I do have a Corvette. We're cracking up laughing.
That's amazing. She must have loved that.
Also inside the box, old Ken dolls, old Barbie dolls, old Barbie clothing. And so I'm thinking this is perfect because she's really enjoying like taking the clothes off and putting them on.
Please clean those things first. You said your grandma's basement, right? I have seen that basement.
How many children have played with this, sneezed on it? This is just going to help her immune system. I'm fine. It's fine.
Yeah. That's how that works.
So she I take out the clothes, I dump them in this pile, and I'm like, look at all these cool like old clothes, and look how Barbie's clothes used to look a long time ago. And she took one look, and she's like, those are dirty and old, and I don't want them.
Thank you, Iris. Thank you. Absolutely right answer. Correct.
I'm like, what? I start digging through and find the cutest like 70s jumpers, and I'm like, this is so cute. And she says, Mom, do you want to play Barbie?
That's amazing. This sounds like this is for you.
Yeah. And I said, I kind of do. And she says, well, there just happens to be a box of old Barbies right beside you.
You can have this. I do not want it.
So I had to resist, though, because I had to, get ready for today's show since we're starting early. And I really wanted to just stop and play Barbie with my daughter, which I never played Barbie when I was a kid, ever. I didn't have Barbies. That wasn't me.
Yeah, because you were too sick. The first time you tried to play with it, you got all the diseases. You're like, I don't want to do this anymore. It's the last strain of polio is in that box. You only realise this when you get older, but parents know. Toys are really fucked up. I went for a phase of collecting all of the Action Men, which is the UK's version of G.I. Joe. And Action Man, the greatest hero of them all. Boom!
Oh, he's an actual character called Action Man.
He's called Action Man, yeah.
Oh, dear,
and
okay.
He had a limited run TV show, and yeah, there's stuff. So he's our version of G.I. Joe. And so I would get all of there was Karate Action Man, there was Knife Action Man, there was Ninja Action Man, there was Machine Gun Action Man, there is the tank that goes with it, there's the Army Jeep, there were just guns and all of the different Judo Action Man as well, Vietnam Action Man. He wasn't a real one, but a thinly veiled Vietnam Action Man. And I'm just like, wow, we're just pigeonholing boys into the army and girls into Barbie. It's so weird to then think, do girls like Barbie because we do this, or because they naturally like Barbie? Do boys naturally like Action Man, or is it because we give them Action Man and G.I. Joe? And you'll never find out unless you experiment on kids in isolation, which maybe we should do just for one generation. But it's so hard.
Please don't clip that part of the show.
We don't. For one generation. Imagine how much we could learn. Just one generation of kids. We do all of the experiments on them, and then we stop and then take all of that learning to raise better kids.
Yeah.
That's my vision of Star Trek for the future.
Oh, dear.
Side note, if there are any website designers out there listening to this show, anybody that deals with cookies, if your website gives me that pop-up that says, we appreciate your privacy, here's our cookies and whatnot, if you don't give me a reject all button, I'm fucking leaving. Don't make me manually go through and untick all 5,000 vendors because I won't do it. I won't use your website. Give me a reject all button or fuck off.
Season 5, Episode 1, Red Directive. Oh, is that how they beam in? Holy shit, is that how they beam in?
Yep.
That's so fucking cool.
No! Fred!
Kill Fred.
God
Kill him.
Damn it!
Dead Fred.
Fred!
Fred is dead.
Fuck! That's the most invested I've been in a character for years.
Oh, Jesus Christ. What the fuck
Starbase.
was that? Why did it go, what just happened? What the fuck just happened?
Yep.
No. That wasn't warp drive. That was just like fucking get the fuck out down. That was like getting sucked down into space.
No, spore drive.
I'm sorry?
Spore drive.
I don't understand why we just got sucked down into space. We always go forward. That was really uncomfortable.
It's weird.
I did not like that. I just opened up Paramount Plus.
Yeah?
We sinned this, didn't we? Did we sin Discovery?
Oh, we've sinned one episode. Yeah, I didn't know if you wrote on it, though.
I think I wrote on that. This looks really familiar.
So you've watched the pilot of Discovery, then?
Yes.
Yeah, with the Klingons. They were weird-looking Klingons.
All I remember is sand.
Yeah, it opens with sand. Yeah. The very
They're
first
like on a
scene.
sand planet. Oh,
Yeah, and there's Michelle Yeoh.
Hold on a second. I'm having memories. Hold on.
This is amazing.
Okay, hold on. Oh my god. Okay. Can I tell you something?
Please
oh
tell
my God.
me. You have
I'm
to
having
now.
memories. Okay. Maybe we talked about this on BTS.
You would have done. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay,
yeah.
wait. I watched the pilot without subtitles on accident.
And it opens with the Klingon talking.
They're completely talking.
Yeah.
I had
We come
no
in
idea
peace.
what they were saying, and I thought it was an artistic choice.
I mean, it could have been.
And I was like, this is fascinating because I don't know what the fuck is going on.
That's so funny.
And I remember that there was like a Klingon that died, and then they like
Yes.
launched him into space or something, and then there's a
Kuzma,
spacewalk,
think.
right? And I'm just
Yes.
like, I don't know what is happening. So I have no idea about any of this. I don't
That's
even,
incredible.
in my mind, I didn't even think this was Star Trek. I thought it was like a different future show, a
that's
different sci-fi
so
show.
funny.
So my brain is right now going, oh my God, that was Star Trek.
Yeah.
And oh yeah, we did watch it. And oh yeah,
Uh-huh.
I have had a little bit of at least an introduction to the characters. And I also remember going onto the ship and thinking like it was
Yes.
really dark and sort of reminded me of the J.J. Abrams situation where we're like really seeing some flashing. And then there was this
Uh-huh.
really interesting alien thing. I can't remember what he looked like though. But it was like this interesting alien person and maybe like
Saru.
lighter color skin. What?
Saru, the tall guy, really tall alien, bald.
I think so.
Yeah. What's amazing is that we could not be further away from that episode. Like, I think the ship that you saw isn't even the ship that we end up being on. I
Like
don't think it's Discovery. I think it's the Shenzhou.
somebody was on a planet that like they were having to be sneaky to get around. There was something to do with water.
They made a giant Starfleet delta in the sand so that the ship
Yeah.
would know that's where they are to beam them up.
Yeah.
And they were fixing
That's
some water problem with the aliens on the planet. Yeah.
Okay, well, confirmation. It's in there somewhere in my
Incredible.
brain. I don't know. I did have to eventually, so because I was working on this as a script, I did watch it multiple
Mhm.
times. And I think on my second watch was when I realized that I hadn't clicked the subtitles,
Amazing.
greatly changed
Changes
my understanding
a
of what was
lot.
happening.
Yeah.
Does he have hooves?